Hey there, heroes and heroines. Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the multiverse of what-ifs. I'm your host, Chronos, and today, we're about to embark on an electrifying journey. But first, a massive shout out to the genius behind this tantalizing tale, Draconite227. Your creativity knows no bounds. Imagine this: what if Deku, our beloved green-haired protagonist, suddenly had the power of Quirk duplication? Yeah, I know, mind-blowing, right? Buckle up, folks, because we're about to unleash the ultimate hero experience. The classroom of middle school kid was usually rambunctious and disorderly. Not today. Today was one of the few quiet days. Izuku was sketching Empty Lady from her debut this morning. A debut he basically had a front row seat to. He pondered her powers, muttering to himself all the while. It took a palm from the one and only Katsuki Bakugo slamming down on his desk to shake him. Hey Izuku, cut that shit out! Katsuki demanded, gazing down at Izuku. His gaze was one of annoyance, but not of rage. Whoops. Sorry about that, Katsuki. I was just thinking about Empty Lady debut this morning, Izuku replied, shrugging. Oh, I think the rest of us got that much, Katsuki retorted, earning a few laughs from the class. Izuku chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. Sorry about that, guys. Someone patted him on the back. Don't worry about it, man. We all want to be heroes and look up to them. Yeah, but an extra like yourself could never be one. Katsuki snapped, a drop of rage in his eyes. I'm sure that everyone here could be if they put in enough work, Izuku rebutted, smiling. Not all of us were born with amazing quirks like you too, someone chimed in from across the classroom. At least one of them has at least a halfway heroic quirk. Izuku's quirk is downright villainous, another student mocked. This set Katsuki off. Hey! Fuck off! Any quirk can be heroic. It's all about use. He's not wrong, Katsuki. This quirk of mine would be something you would expect a supervillain to have. Izuku chuckled, trying to calm down his friend. That would be like saying mine is villainous too, Katsuki yelled, small explosion coming from his hands. No, quirks in class, the teacher yelled from across the room. Katsuki went TCH before calming down. The rest of the class was complete, uneventful. Izuku peered out the window most of time. The sun was setting in the distance when class was over. Katsuki snapped a finger, gaining Izuku's attention. I was going to check your pulse next if you hadn't reacted. Katsuki chuckled. Sorry. Thinking about my quirk, Izuku said, pulling a pencil to his hand. He had his mother's weak telekinesis. This was not his quirk, though. Her quirk was just part of his. He had a quirk that any aspiring evil overlord would kill to have, quirk duplication. Any individual that made skin-to-skin contact with him, he gained their quirk. Not copied, not sort of, had a lesser version, an honest-to-God duplicate of the original. Secondary resistances and all included. You've got my quirk, there's no way you can go wrong. Katsuki patted Izuku's back before standing up straight and pointing his thumb to his chest. Because I'm fucking awesome. Thanks, Katsuki, Izuku replied, getting up from his chair. He put his notebook in his backpack. Izuku stood just an inch short from Katsuki. He was nearly as muscular as the other teenager. He was plain looking, but had a brilliant smile that could lit up a room. Did you fill out your UA application yet? Katsuki asked as they left the room. Izuku shrugged. I've had it on my desk for weeks, but that's a place for heroes. And I really want to go, but I'm afraid that my quirk will paint a huge target on my back. Katsuki frowned. He wasn't good at consoling others. He hated it, in fact. Emotions weren't his thing. Well, except rage. Rage was focus and strength. Izuku had been his friend for years. He decided maybe a harsher approach would work. Look, we didn't put all the hard work in for you to become a Deku again. Man the fuck up. Izuku took a deep breath. You're right. Man the fuck up. The two of them were halfway home, before it dawned on Izuku. Ah, shit. I forgot my homework. Izuku sighed. If you go now, I think the school's still open, Katsuki stated with his hands in pocket. Alright, I'll see you at the gym then, Izuku shouted, rocketing off with a single explosion. Old underpass. Izuku sighed, walking past an old underpass that was supposed to save him some time. A sense of dread filled the young man. Years spent with Katsuki had honed his combat sense to some degree. Nothing compared to the blonde protege, but more than average. What a nice-looking fresh sack, a disembodied voice called out from behind him. Izuku rolled forward out of instinct, just narrowly dodging a slimy tentacle. What the? Izuku managed to say before jumping out the way of another attack. What a fine specimen! You'll do nicely as my new body. The monster redoubled his efforts. Body possession, is that even possible? Midoriya panicked. 1. 2 more dodges. Izuku was getting antsy. He really wasn't trying to use his power. He didn't want to give this monster any more reason to pursue him. A slimy tentacle gripped onto his leg from behind. He got behind me. That's what I get for worrying about his safety, Izuku chastised. A large man came into view. Izuku's body was getting slowly covered. Texas! The man shouted, earning an oh shit from the slime monster. Smash! Air pressure exploded from the man's fist. All Might! Izuku shouted, dropping to ground. I'm sorry I'm late. Don't fear, for I am here, All Might shouted. He was quick at work picking up ooze and putting it in bottles. Holy crap, I'm a huge fan. Izuku was just vibrating with excitement. I bet you are, young man. I'm impressed you held your own against him for so long. All Might's voice practically boomed with bravado and gumption. Thank you. I've been honing my skills for years, Izuku replied, blushing and rubbing his neck. All right. I hope you have an excellent day. I need to take this guy to the local precinct. All Might tapped his leg where the bottles were. He crouched down, ready to leap. Without a moment's hesitation, Izuku leapt after All Might and grabbed his leg. Random rooftop. Holy crap, that was scary, Midoriya thought, catching his breath. All Might had leapt with so much speed and height that Midoriya was out of breath from the wind. Young man, that was reckless, All Might chastised him. White smoke was bellowing from the large man. Damn it, he whispered. Then all of a sudden the towering man had vanished in an explosion of white smoke. All Might! Are you alright? Izuku called out to him in the fog. Unbeknownst to Izuku, a new quirk popped into his head. It was a small burning ember. It was fuel and fire. A skeleton of a man waved his hand and cleared the smoke. Izuku jumped, scared by the deathly-looking man. Who are you? Izuku shouted, looking around. Where's All Might? Calm down, young man. I am All Might, the skeleton said, placing a head on his chest. His gaze was the same stoic hero. Izuku nodded, knowing this was not a lie. What happened? Why are you like this? Izuku's concern and worry dripped from his voice. The thin Might sat down against the bars along the rooftop. Why indeed? It took the hero a few moments to decide what exactly he was going to show the young man. Thin Might lifted up his shirt. This is why. Izuku gasped and placed his hands over his mouth in shock. That looks horrible, Izuku stated, examining the aftermath of an injury. It is. My entire respiratory system is damaged and half my stomach was destroyed. I have a time limit now. Thin Might held up 3 fingers. 3 hours and that's it. When and why doesn't the public know? Izuku asked, taking a step forward. That question caught All Might off guard. It was 5 years ago. The public shouldn't know. The public shouldn't know that their symbol of peace is this decrepit man. Sure, the villain would love to know, but the world should know that their symbol of peace is dying. At least then you can spur on the next generation and look for someone to hold your mantle. Izuku shouted at the man, a bit of rage is his voice. Another side effect of duplicating someone's quirk, a bit of them is imprinted on Izuku. You sound like you want this burden? All Might asked, narrowing his eyes. Izuku looked away. That's what I wanted to ask you. He looked back to the man. Can someone with a villainous quirk like mine become a hero like you? A villainous quirk? How so? Thin Might looked puzzled. While he had seen his fair share of villainous quirks, it was the individual that made the villain. My quirk allows me to duplicate someone else's quirk and use it as if I was born with it. A power that you'd find in a manga or TV show. Midoriya started to tear up. This was a sensitive subject for him. Midoriya's quirk reminded him of another very powerful individual that had a similar quirk. That man was truly a villain. That's quite the quirk you have. All Might left space, making the unspoken question. Izuku Midoriya. He bowed, realizing just how rude he had been. Well, Midoriya, my boy, not all quirks are made the same. Some are more powerful. Some are weak. Some are like yours. Yours is one with tremendous potential and yet so very scary to the people of the world. You can take what makes us unique and use it. 4. All Might voice trailed off, realizing he had touched the boy head. It was merely to protect him, but he didn't think that he had a quirk like that. The man shot to his feet. Do you have it? He questioned, his teeth gritting. Your quirk, you mean? Midoriya rubbed his chin in thought. He found a new entity within him. It was some kind of power accumulation quirk. What power and where he did not know, but it was there. It was like a warm hearth within his quirk space. Unlike explosion, it had no toggle, but it wasn't like he could willingly pull on it. He held out his hand and channeled this new power through explosion. He aimed his palm away from All Might. He let out a small explosion. The resulting force knocked him off his feet. He wasn't ready for it. Another unusual aspect was that his explosion was green. What is your power? Izuku asked, standing up. I'm surprised you can use it so quickly. What is it that you want to be? All Might stood tall over the young man. Midoriya's eyes darted away. I want to be a hero, but with this quirk I don't think I'll be accepted. Midoriya, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your power or that other heroes won't be afraid of. Trust me, they will be. A power such as yours is terrifying to think of and even worse to behold. But if you wish to be a hero, then run headlong at the goal with everything you have. All Might grinned, giving the young man a thumbs up. A small explosion was heard in the distance. A random street was blazing fire all around. A faint sound made way across the horizon. Izuku knew what it was. Be a hero, huh? Izuku looked at All Might's pockets and spotted nothing. Panic set in as he realized he had caused this. It would now be his duty to fix it. I'm sorry, All Might. I have to go. Izuku yelled, barreling through the roof access and down the stairs. That was unusual. All Might muttered, shrugging his shoulder. Another faint sound came across the horizon. All Might figured he should at least check it out. Scene of the slime monster. Izuku was running at the best pace he could set. When he reached the crowd, he couldn't believe the sight of carnage before him. The crowd was too dense to see what was going on. Heroes were shouting out orders. Contain the fires, help this kid, we need a hero with a good quirk, and this kid been holding his own for a while now. That last one caught Izuku's attention. Like a call to arms, his friend yelling and shouting prompted action from the young man. He dove through the crowd in an instant and sprinted at the slime behemoth. Katsuki was smack dab in the middle of it. Heroes yelled at him to stop. He could only think, if no one will help, then I should. The slime monster was firing off explosions seemingly at random. Izuku, what are you doing here? Katsuki managed to shout. I'm here to save you, Midoriya shouted, grabbing his friend's wrist. He let out a powerful blast, pulling Katsuki halfway out of the behemoth. Damn it, I could have handled him by myself, Katsuki protested. You can say thanks later. Let's tag team him, Izuku commanded. Bakugo was about to reply, but nodded instead. He helped Izuku pull him out with another blast. The two teens were out of the slime mess, and it was angry. You're the one from before. I'll just have to kill both of you, the slime shouted, sprouted numerous tentacles. While I doubt we can beat him, let's keep him busy until a pro with a compatible quirk shows up, Izuku stated, blasting away two tentacles. Let's do this then. Katsuki smirked, dodging and weaving around the slime. The two of them took turns blasting and defending. They worked beyond well in tandem. The pro heroes were just watching the two teenagers duking it out with the beast. Thin Might had just arrived at the scene. He was astonished to see young Midoriya and someone he presumed was a friend duke it out with the slime monster. But the battle would be lost if someone didn't show up. The kids were powerful and coordinated, but they couldn't hurt him. It was a battle of attrition that they were losing. Three thoughts came out in unison. When will someone show up and help? Thin Might gritted his teeth. How dare I think of him like that villain? That right there is a hero through and through. And if I'm not willing to put it all on the line like them, then what am I? All Might chastised himself. All Might burst onto the scene, blocking an attack that would have landed. I'm sorry I'm late. What kind of hero would I be if I just let you clean up my mess? The man said to Izuku. This caught Bakugo's attention and no one else. Your reign of terror is over, villain. Detroit. Smash! All Might swung his mighty fist. Air pressure rocketed out from the attack. All the fire around and in the buildings extinguished from the lack of oxygen. The local weather changed from the blast, causing it to rain briefly. Empty Lady and the other heroes on the scenes had to brace the crowd and themselves from the massive blast. Reporter and citizen alike flooded the scene. The other heroes congratulated Izuku and Katsuki for having such impressive teamwork and buying All Might the time he needed to arrive. A few of the reporters even asked Izuku and Katsuki about the event. Katsuki boasted about his skill in the battle while Izuku focused on the fact no one got hurt. All in all, they were just as professional as the actual pros on the scene. They broke away after the few questions the reporters had. They gave their home addresses for the police if they wished to contact them about questions or make a report. At the few blocks away from home, Mark Katsuki had said his goodbyes and gone his way. Izuku was nearly at this apartment when a large man landed in front of him. All Might's large form exploded into mist. Thin Might coughed up blood before speaking. "Thank you for reminding me what being a true hero is about." "What, I didn't do anything." Izuku hand-waved the man. He had merely helped his friend. "When you heard his voice, did you think?" All Might asked. "No, my body just moved and before I knew it I was breaking Katsuki free," Izuku replied, thinking back to the event. "Every great hero has a similar story. My body just started to move on its own, is the common thread they all share. I believe you have what it takes to become a hero, nay, the symbol of peace," All Might declared. "The symbol of peace." Midoriya stuttered, tears well up in his eyes. Then like waterfalls they flowed. He made a good attempt to keep his composure, only lasting a few seconds. All his life he wanted someone to recognize him as a hero, or at least the potential to be one. His mother was always supportive, but being told was another thing. "Come on, my boy, that's no way for a hero to look," All Might chuckled. He wiped his eyes. "Yes, sir. Thank you, I've waited so long for someone to tell me I'm worthy." "How would you like to be my successor?" Thin Might announced, holding out his hand. A sphere of power manifested in the hero's hand. "What?" Izuku looked confused. "I wasn't born with this power. It was given to me," Thin Might declared. This had floored Izuku. If his mental image of the man wasn't shattered, it was now. His idol had been a quirkless man given the power of a god. Passing on quirks was a new idea to Izuku, but considering how his power worked, it was not beyond reason. The answer became clear to Izuku: forge your own path. "All Might. Thank you, but I'll have to decline. I'll accept your other challenge, though." Midoriya clenched his fist. Again, twice in the same day, Izuku had just floored the number one hero. "That was rather unexpected. May I ask why?" the pro asked, cocking an eyebrow. "While I appreciate the offer, I have two reasons. 1, I doubt that power and mine would work well together. 2, I think with a quirk like mine I should forge my own path. I will, however, take your mantle," Izuku declared, smirking. This made Thin Might grin. Being the symbol of peace wasn't just being number one or the strongest. It was being the bastion of hope everyone looked towards for guidance and inspiration, while also being the bulwark that protected the citizens from the villains. And if done well enough, their presence would be felt so far that the mere mention of the symbol would strike fear into the hearts of villains. A lot to live up to. Toshinori was sure that this young lad could do it. "I look forward to seeing you at UA then," All Might said, walking off waving. In Izuku's room. If Izuku wasn't motivated yet, he was now. He filled out the paperwork so quickly he was afraid it would catch fire. Of course it didn't, but it could. The young man had completely forgotten about Katsuki and the gym. He immediately texted his friend apologizing for missing, but he had just completed all the paperwork in one night. "K, about time. Want to make a bet?" "I bet for what?" "K, how's going to take first place in the exam?" "What else?" As if Midoriya thought it could have been anything else. What's the stakes?" He wasn't a betting man, but if it pushed them to be better, he was all for it. "K, let's see." "K, I know. You can't use my power for 2 weeks after we get into school." Fine. If it's going to be that way. No swearing for 2 weeks." "K, oh, fuck that. That's way harder." No it isn't. Not using your power when it's the one I know best is suicidal in the hero course." "K, you got me there. You have a deal." Deal then. Good night, Katsuki." "K, night." 10 months from now would be their fated day at UA. Izuku and Katsuki were in an abandoned parking lot. Both of the teens had worked up a sheen of sweat. They were relentlessly sparring. It was the quickest way to improve quirk resistance and strengthen their bodies. "Come on, Izuku. Is that all you got? You've got my quirk and your mother's. Is this all you can do?" Katsuki taunted. Between the two of them, Izuku was tired and hurting all over. While he had Katsuki quirk he couldn't use anywhere near as good as the owner could. I've been wondering about this new quirk for a while now. It's an interesting one. Green lightning crackled across his skin. Midoriya raised one arm and angled the other downwards. The enhanced explosion rocketed him towards Katsuki. He estimated that whatever this quirk was, it could enhance other quirks. With his current flame, it was only possible to augment his other quirks by at most 10%. In the case of explosion, it was closer to 21%. This was due to the quirk operating from two parts, one being the sweat and the other the actual explosion. Empowering both parts multiplied each improvement. To say the least, 21% was more than Katsuki could gap or overcome. Izuku was behind in power by maybe 10 to 12%. Two explosions collided and Izuku's won out. Katsuki let his arm take most of the explosion before reacting just in time. Izuku had landed next to Katsuki and swung his right elbow into him. The protege caught Izuku's elbow with his other open hand. The blonde boy acted first, swinging his other fist. Izuku combined a side step and his mother quirk to just dodge the strike. Izuku grabbed his opponent's arm, creating a stalemate. Bakugo headbutt Izuku, breaking the stalemate. The green-haired teen stumbled backward and shook his head. Bakugo roared into the air, planning on landing an aerial attack. Green lightning surged forth. Izuku shot out his right arm and another green explosion let loose. The protege was no pushover and had the skills of any master. Katsuki let loose an explosion that sent him out of the way. The blonde tumbled to the ground and skidded across the concrete. His side and arm got scrapped pretty good by the fall. Enough, Izuku panted. Bakugo stood up, his skin singed from the green flame. Agreed. 2 sparrings, 2 body-building days, and 2 stamina-building days. 1 day of rest, Izuku panted. This will be hard to keep up with you. You know that, you damn monster. Izuku smirked, looking over at Bakugo. You want to be the very best. Then you have to train harder than them. Your form still needs work. That power is new though, Bakugo suggested. I got it from All Might, Izuku admitted, walking over to his backpack. He chugged a bottle of water before an idea formed in his head. Ever consider using water for training? You got it from All Might? Katsuki shouted, getting in front of the other teen. Yeah, it's a power accumulation type. If he's had it for years, it explains why he's so powerful. All he would need to do is stay in peak shape and the power would augment his strength, speed, and stamina. Izuku rattled off, going back to his notebook. When did you meet All Might? Katsuki continued, questioning him. Just before helping you with that slime monster. I was pestering him about having a villainous quirk. Izuku sighed, looking at Katsuki directly. It wasn't all it was cut out to be. But now I know I want to aim past him and take his mantle. Katsuki chuckled, getting himself a water bottle. Look at you. A week ago you didn't even want to be a fucking hero, but now you want to be the hero. God damn, Izuku, just remember I'll still be number 1. What kind of symbol would I be if I just let you beat me to the top? Izuku smirked, chuckling. How did the first day feel? I don't want to tire you out and have to carry your dead ass home. Katsuki mocked. I think I just need to get used to it. I'll have to ask Mom to add in more meats and vegetables into our meals. I'll also need to develop a better studying method, Izuku admitted, finishing a bottle of water. I've got a fucking great one, Katsuki laughed. Remembering everything is not a great one. Some of us have to actually try to be smart, Izuku retorted, throwing the empty bottle at Katsuki. The other teens swatted it out of the air. TCH, get a second notebook then. Take notes about what you don't understand and I'll go through it with you. Awesome. I'll head to the store now then. Otherwise I'll forget or worse get sidelined by a hero fight. Izuku chuckled, knowing his luck finding or being in hero fights. Well, if you do, don't fucking fight. UA isn't going to like us showboating before we get into the school, Katsuki stated, picking up his backpack. Izuku did the same. The sun had nearly vanished off the horizon. Luckily, there was a convenience store just a few blocks from his house. He grabbed a few notebooks off a shelf, some markers, pens, pencils, and an eraser. There was a pink-haired girl at the checkout with a dozen energy drinks. She had bags under her eyes. Pulling an all-nighter or two? Izuku asked her. The girl turned to Izuku and gave him a once-over. He was a mess. Singed clothing and light burns dotted his skin. His hair was even more unworldly than normal. I wish. This is just for tonight. She was unusually peppy and spry for looking that tired. Whoa, that can't be healthy, Izuku commented. Well, how else am I going to complete my babies and get them submitted to UA? She pouted. You're going to UA too? Support? Izuku asked, smirking. Yup. I'm going to be the best inventor there ever was, she declared, pumping her fist in the air. What a coincidence. I'm going to be the next symbol of peace. This earned him a grin from the pink-haired girl. May Hatsum. She presented her hand to him. It was odd and a bit American to do. He shook her hand. Izuku Midoriya. If you're going to be the symbol of peace, Midoriya-san, then I'm going to support you, she boasted, smirking. Slow down, Hatsum-san, how do I know you're any good? Izuku smirked, wondering what kind of rise he'd get. Hatsum made a face like someone had killed her grandmother in front of her. A look of determination and defiance came across her face. She then got a little too close for comfort. I'll just have to show you then. She checked out and waited for him to check out as well. Hatsum beckoned him before she broke out into a run. Izuku smirked and caught up to her. So where are we going? Izuku asked, jogging beside her. She wasn't quite fast enough for him to actually run. Another feature of hers caught his attention. It made him blush, and he chastised himself for even looking. She was definitely a woman, and the running was making it all too obvious. To my workshop, of course. She smiled as if it was the most obvious statement ever. What, you live around here? Izuku asked, still recognizing the area he was in. Not my home, but my workshop is around here, May replied as they turned down a street. You rented out a workshop? You must be really passionate, Izuku remarked. Well, my parents did. I sell blueprints to make the rent, otherwise I'd have to make my babies at home, May stated, slowing down to a walk. Let me guess, they banned you from working at home? Izuku guessed, seeing a heap of broken parts and scrapped projects. Yeah, said I can't set the house on fire anymore, May chuckled. She was cute in her own determined, crazy way. Izuku whistled when she opened the door to her shop. It was a mess. Tools all over the place. Broken bots, parts, broken you name it was here. Are you normally this messy, or is this an off day? Huh! This is clean, Hatsum said, pulling out gear and parts from seemingly random piles. One of the things that his mother's quirk allowed him to do was recognize small parts. This room overloaded his spatial awareness, trying to catalog and touch every object. The inventor pulled out a notebook and sat at her desk. Okay, symbol of peace, she mocked. What is your quirk? If I tell you, promise not to get spooked. Izuku stood in the center of the room. She shrugged and gestured for him to continue. Quirk duplication. I have the ability to gain another person's quirk as if I had been born with it. As far as I can tell, all quirks are free game. Mutant type only get duplicated if I met the prerequisite body structure first. Like if wings are your quirk, I can't duplicate that, Izuku explained, looking around. Before he knew it, she was on him. South close, he was blushing. Her glove on one hand was off. She touched his exposed neck, getting him to back away instantly. What are you doing? Skin-to-skin contact is how I duplicate quirks. It's why I wear these. Izuku gestured to his long-sleeve undershirt and green gloves he wore. Then her quirk kicked in. It was a mutant type, but one with a basic prerequisite, eyes. Izuku's pupils formed a plus sign. His vision zoomed in on her eyes. He shook his head, blinking. That was a new one. Within his quirk space, a new contender appeared. Her quirk was a lens within the space. Wow, I thought you were lying, but you duplicated my quirk, May marveled at Izuku. The potential he had was beyond her wildest dreams. What, do you have a zooming quirk of some kind? Izuku asked, finally getting the quirk under control after a minute or two. Yup. It's called zoom. I can magnify my vision, and if I really try I can see up to 5 kilometers away, May explained, sitting back down. She was jotted down notes furiously. I can see why you're an inventor that specializes in robotics. Zoom would be very helpful for that, Izuku commented, enhancing his vision to see what she was writing. Are there any limitations? Can you use multiply quirks at once? Do you need to learn the quirk? Or do you get some innate knowledge? How many quirks do you have? May rattled off question after question. Only mutant prerequisites and stamina so far as my limitations. I can use multiply quirks at once and synergize them. I have to learn how to use the quirk just like the original owner. I have 4 quirks now, thanks to you. Izuku answered her in order and clearly. 4 quirks? That's it. Don't you want more? May asked, more curiosity than anything else. It's not like I go around just touching people. Some quirks can't be turned off, so I don't want to just get a new one and find out I can't use it with what I already have," Izuku then whispered. "Plus, it's kind of villainous to just go around collecting more power." How does that saying go? Guns and knives don't kill people. People kill people. Quirks are like that. Nothing more than tools to be applied at the owner's discretion," Mei retorted before getting her peppy tone back. "What's the 4 quirks?" "Weak telekinesis, explosion, power storage, and well, zoom," Izuku stated. "Wow, random, but a few strong ones in there. Power storage?" Mei asked, jotting down more notes. "I'm still not sure where the power is derived, but it doesn't lessen when used. It can supercharge my other quirks, but costs double the stamina doing that," Izuku explained, lifting up multiply items with his weak telekinesis. "The limit of the telekinesis is about 10 kilograms, and I can control up to 10 items at once. It also gives me a sense of everything within 20 meters. If I focus hard enough, I can check your pulse." Izuku chuckled, sorting the debris and finding a chair. He pulled it out of the mess and set it in the middle of the room. He then sat down and opened his palm, aiming to the ceiling. He let loose a small explosion. Explosion. Magnitude around 10 kilograms of TNT at maximum. Causes damage to self at that level though. Secondary benefits is concussive resistance, enhanced bone strength, and thicker brain fluid to handle the concussive force better. Explosion is created by my sweat and is only detonated from the hands. Its composition is like that of nitroglycerin. You must have had that one for years to know that much about it," Mei commented, finishing her notes. "Well, Doc, what do you recommend?" Izuku chuckled. "I've got a few babies you could try and see if they work. Otherwise, I can just test them on you." Mei jumped out of her seat and fetched an arm guard. "This is a prototype, but it should work." Mei smirked, clamping it on Izuku's forearm. It engaged a moment later, covering from wrist to shoulder. The servos hummed as he moved his arm. "What does it do?" Izuku asked, finding his movement constricted slightly. His guard wasn't slow, it was just tight. "It's meant to damp recoil from rifles or other large-caliber weapons. But I think your explosion qualifies as large caliber. Let's go outside and give it a try," Mei offered, getting up. He followed her outside into the backyard. He held out the reinforced arm and let loose. Instead of going light, he chose to let loose a 70%-ish explosion. The area quaked a bit from the concussive force. Usually, anything above 50% would cause noticeable strain, but the dampening effect had worked. The young man swung his arm in a wide arc before launching off a series of attacks. The final step was to test durability. "You have the blueprint for this, right?" "Yeah, why?" Mei asked, watching in horror as he let loose a point-blank explosion against his own arm. While it protected him, it was worse for wear after that. The servos were failing and snapping as he moved it again. "You'll have to make it tougher and less tight next time. The brace worked, but I need something that can withstand getting hit by my own quirk. After all, these aren't mine." Izuku mercilessly tore the rest of the arm guard off. She knelt on the ground next to her decreased invention. "Failure is the mother of all invention. I'll do better next time. I think a titanium tungsten alloy with a thin rubber interior would work. The servos and connector also need to be able to float and move with the user. Just in case you get some kind of transformation quirk, it could compensate to a degree before breaking." She mumbled, notebook in hand. Izuku looked down at her and couldn't but help worry. She looked so tired, but so determined. "Hatsum-san," he called out to her. When he didn't get her attention, he snatched her notebook. She tried to jump for it, but Izuku tossed it up, catching it with his telekinesis. "Hatsum-san," Izuku said again. "Give it back. I've still got to make a dozen more notes and ideas for you," Mei demanded. "And I think you should get to bed. It's dark out anyway and you look like death," Izuku retorted. "That's not nice to say to a lady," she pouted, crossing her arms. Izuku nicely took her pencil and floated it up to her notebook. "I'll leave you my phone number. Call me in the morning after you've got some sleep and I'll return your notebook," Izuku said, writing with his telekinesis. He ripped off the corner of the page where he had put his number. Mei could only watch the telekinetic perform his feats of precision. More ideas were flooding into her mind. The green-haired lad brought the piece of paper down to her. "Fine. If I get some sleep, you promise to return it," she sighed. "Yes, I do," he said, bringing the book back down to earth. He caught it and held onto it. "In return, I'll help you test out your equipment and even spur you on if you get stuck." Izuku offered, smiling. She sighed and let down her guard. I expect you here twice a week. I've got a lot of devices to cover and only 10 months before UA. Same here. Instead, I'll be training those 10 months and schooling in this. Izuku smirked for emphasis. Where do you live so I can get my notebook? Mei asked shamelessly. I'm not telling you that. Izuku replied, walking through her workshop to the door. He spotted a cot, but it was covered in parts and devices. Making use of his telekinesis, he cleared it off and sorted like things. As if she didn't understand social cues at all. She started to strip basically in front of Izuku. His reaction was proper and quick. What are you doing? He shouted. Getting ready for bed, she replied, now in her brow. You're not supposed to just get naked in front of strangers. Izuku turned away, unlocking the front door with telekinesis. Oh, but we're not strangers, so it should be fine. Mei shrugged. What kind of logic is that? Izuku panicked, closing his eyes. Not that it helped him much. His telekinesis gave him excellent spatial awareness, so much so he could still see with his eyes shut. Objects had no color, but he could make out their outline. Hatsume's outline was more than enough to fuel his imagination. I'll be going now, he said, swinging the door open and then closed it. He locked it from the outside and took off. Hatsume shrugged. He was a weird one. But with a quirk like that, she wasn't passing up the opportunity to be his support. His quirk would force him into the spotlight, which in turn would bring her babies into the spotlight as well. Home. Izuku got home and tried to calm down his blush. He had almost seen a naked girl, and that was just too much for his heart to take. Izuku, you're late. Are you okay? Inko asked from the kitchen. Yeah, I met a new friend and she's a bit strange. He stressed that last part. He kicked off his shoes and walking into the dining area. Is she now? Is this something I should worry about? Inko asked, stepping into the dining area. No. It's not like that. More like a work friend. She wants to be my support, and I think she's got the passion to do it. Izuku explained, seeing a simmering meal in the kitchen. Symbol of peace, right? You know I support you, but you're going to worry me to death aiming for that. Inko stated, standing face to face with Izuku. Ever since Izuku had gotten a quirk, she was so relieved that he could pursue his dream of becoming a hero. Her heart had sunk when he was being bullied for having a villainous quirk. After Izuku had explained his actual quirk, she almost felt the same way. She knew as a mother she had to hope for the best, but his quirk was villainous in nature. Mom, I'm going to become the symbol of peace no matter what. I need to show people that being born with a villainous quirk doesn't make it so. I want to inspire everyone and strike fear in those that wish to do harm. Izuku stated, clenching his fist. She frowned but nodded. This was his dream and wishes. She had to respect that, even if it killed her to see her baby hurt, burned, or sad. Do you think it would be possible to add more meat and vegetables to our diet? In need for energy and protein for muscles? He asked. Yeah, sure, I can do that. You're so strong already, and you're hoping to get even stronger before UA, right? That's the plan. I don't want to walk into UA at the basic level. I want them to know I gave my all to be there, and this is what I have to offer the world. His confidence was infectious. She nodded, smiling. If he was happy, that's all she could ever want. It was the second time he was there this week. The arm guard / brace had been but a skeleton the last time he was there. How does it look? Mei asked, standing next to Izuku. A little bulky, Izuku replied, earning him a light smack in the stomach from her. But it's true. Put it on and tell me then. Mei shook her head. Izuku slipped on the rubber insulating and shock absorption sleeve and glove. He then laid his arm in the guard. Being the wearer, he closed the device. Once the clasps were close enough, they magnetically aligned and bolts screwed into place. Magnetic sealing. Do you think it could be made collapsible and deployable on the spot? Maybe being made from different materials for different scenarios? Izuku asked, flexing and moving it around. That would be difficult since not all materials are the same composite or properties. Mei was jotting down notes like a mad scientist. Which honestly she actually was one. Izuku telekinetically opened the back door. Mei followed him, notebook in hand. The glove is a bit thick, Izuku commented, squeezing his hand. Is that a problem? Mei asked. My explosion come from my sweat, so if the material can't breathe and allow the sweat to pass, it might backfire. Izuku looked to Mei. That's a cloth rubber polymer, it should breathe well enough, Mei assured. All right, Izuku shrugged. He held up his hand. What happened next would have been called an unmitigated disaster. The glove bloated. The fire and heat crept up his arm, melting the rubber. The fire finally found a way out at his elbow. Izuku gritted his teeth in pain. Melting rubber burned like hell. He started to claw at it, trying to find the release on the metal part of the guard. May dropped her notebook. Wait. It requires 2 touch points to disengage the magnetic coupling. Trying his best to be calm. Then assist me. That request was all it took for her to get into gear. The first point was the wrist, and about 20 centimeters 8" away up the arm was the other point. May completed the circuit by placing her pinky on one and her thumb on the other. That's brilliant, Izuku said through clenched teeth. The small battery maintaining the magnetic connection hummed as it powered down. The guard let go. Izuku wasted no time ripping off the guard and the rubber. His explosion quirk gave him some limited heat and fire resistance. Just in case if an explosion was reflected or a point-blank range attack was made. He was lucky to get away with first-degree burns. May looked like she was about to cry. This was the first time anyone had ever been seriously injured by her babies. She had vowed never to invent anything that could harm people directly. There was enough violence in the world and she didn't want to contribute to it. I'm so sorry, I should have listened to you, May said, tears welling up. Izuku turned to her, and she stumbled when he stepped towards her. Izuku was quick to react. He wrapped one arm around her back and stopped her from falling. It was Izuku's turn to be far too close to her. Hatsum-san, you can't blame yourself for this. I'm not even hurt that much. He tried to console her. She studied his eyes. He was gentle and had some kind of determination deep within. His spirit and strength practically radiated from him. She looked away, feeling like there was no possible way to match him, and even worse, she felt guilty. I'll do better next time. If you'll still have me, she offered, sniffing. Of course. If anyone can do it, it's you, Izuku answered, steadying her before letting go. May had liked being in his arms, if not only briefly. He was warm, and just being near him lifted her spirit. She felt like he pushed her to be better. You better get that under some cold water before it gets worse or you get an infection, May advised. Izuku chuckled, rubbing his neck. You're right. I'll take off for now and get this taken care of. He walked to the door and paused. The green-haired teenager sighed. Look. Don't think that hurting me is fine or anything like that. Think of it like growing pains. I expect to get hurt aiming to be the symbol of peace. What I don't want is my friends and family lingering on the fact I got hurt. It's why I got hurt that should matter. If I saved a life or stopped a villain, that should be focal point, not some injury that can heal. The pink-haired girl meekly nodded, trying to wipe the tears from her face. After that he was gone. The inventor knelt down and examined her work. Fiddling with the magnetic parts only raised her frustration. Finally, she snapped and threw down the guard. She slammed her fist into the ground. Come on, put yourself back together. This isn't what Izuku would want. Saying his first name didn't feel bad. She wanted to think of him as friend, as a hero, as an equal. Taking a deep breath, she calmed down. The rest of that night she had redoubled her efforts. She was going to match his determination to be the best. The only way to get there is to reach for the heavens. 8 months to go. For once the workshop was looking more shop, less hoarder's paradise. This was not because Hatsum wanted it to be clean, but because Izuku gave her no choice. He used almost exclusively his telekinesis to lift objects and sort them. He had found out that he could use power storage and his weak telekinesis together. It resulted in a bloody nose, but increased the capacity of his telekinesis 3-fold. Izuku made sure to make a note about the interaction in his notebook. Weaker powers are enhanced more than strong ones. Or maybe there is more facets of telekinesis than explosion, and it gives power storage more area to apply to. The last 20 minutes or so he had been watching just over her shoulder. She didn't seem to mind the closeness, and he was getting used to her. She was writing up a schematic for some kind of deployable communication device. That was at least what Izuku could decipher. He was doing his best to understand all the notes and designs. But he was no genius, and worse, had limited experience reading technical documents. At first it didn't bother May. She understood he was just being curious. If they had more time, she wouldn't mind teaching him all the symbols and the design process. She figured that could be useful for a hero to know. She wasn't ticklish at all on her neck, but slowly her skin started to get goosebumps from his breath. It was hot and just at the right distance not to be stifling, but not so far that she wouldn't notice. Whatever it was eliciting from her must be a primal feeling. Her skin was getting flushed and blood was moving around. It was an abnormal feeling. She felt annoyed to have eyes so close on her work, but at the same time his closeness felt good. It was a new feeling to have someone that really cared about you. Her parents cared, but she determined it was more obligation than truth. Suddenly, someone else's opinion mattered to her. It helped that he was just as determined and crazy as her. He was fun to talk to. He wasn't overly critical, but not useless either. The input from him almost always was more than useful. Some of the days, they just sat in silence. Izuku doing his homework and Mei working on projects. She even helped him with his homework. But his breath was getting to her. It must be her womanly instincts getting affected. She turned her head to look at him. It was his turn for his skin to get flushed. Whether it be embarrassment or nervousness. Having fun? Mei asked, wondering if he was aware of what he was doing. Izuku raised an eyebrow. I am just watching. The stutter was just too cute. Mei checks got beet red. She then whispered meekly. Why, you're too close. If Izuku wasn't blushing, he was now. Sorry. Izuku stuttered, standing up straight and walking away. He was rubbing the back of his neck nervously. Her heart sunk a bit. Panic set in. She stood up, knocking her chair over. Sorry. I didn't mean to point it out. I don't mind really, Mei admitted. This unknown feeling was creating a knot in her stomach. She messed up a lot, but this was not something she was willing to mess up. He turned to her, and she feared the worst. It's fine, really. I was just overstaying my welcome. Izuku chuckled nervously. That was not the reply she was hoping for, but it was better than some of the ones she could have thought of. Oh, okay, just don't be a stranger, Mei replied, mentally punching herself. That wasn't the direction she wanted to go. She wanted to address inner struggle. She wanted to get those feelings out of her head. He collected his backpack and swung the door open with telekinesis. She wanted to reach out, but instead picked up her chair. Sitting back down, she heard the door click. Mei wanted to cry a little bit, but held fast. This was not the last time they would see each other. 7 months to go. Prototype test number 3. Izuku was out in her backyard. The glove material was much thinner this time. He let loose several explosions. No backfire. He fired a point-blank blast at the guard. It held up just fine. Limit breaker test was next. Have you seen my green lightning yet? Izuku asked, looking to Mei. Green lightning, she repeated slowly. That was not the usual color of lightning. She assumed it was Quirk related. Is there any way to measure what it is? Izuku asked, punching the air a few times. I can see if it's electrical in nature, but beyond that I'd need to know more about it before I could make something to measure it, Mei replied, making a few notes. Izuku took a deep breath and channeled the power through his right arm. It enhances my other quirks by some amount. That amount can only be determined after I use it to enhance them. The downside is that I eat my stamina at a terrifying pace. It also amplifies the physical repercussions of using a quirk. An enhanced explosion hurts my arms at a steep rate. Enhancing telekinesis causes nosebleeds fairly quickly. That sounds like a lot of hassle. It's powerful for sure, and I can see why you'd use it, but doesn't that sound dangerous? Mei commented. It is. It's horribly dangerous. But I have to use it if I want to get the edge over the original owners. I doubt I could ever match someone that was born with it, so this is my way to compensate for that, Izuku said, aiming sky high. He let loose a green blast. Mei was not prepared for the shockwave. She fell over from it. She looked up, shock on her face. What in the world? Mei whispered. Did that trip anything? Except for you, of course. Izuku wondered, holding out a hand to her. He pulled her to her feet. She examined his magnetic couplings and the servos. The recoil force had damaged the servos slightly. They weren't made to withstand recoil force at that level. Wow, you damaged the servos a little bit. Those are made with titanium bearings. Mei marveled. I'd say it's doing its job then. The recoil didn't hurt at all. In a real situation it would be perfectly fine for my hero costume to get wrecked as the fight grew more intense. The only problem I have right now is one that might be hard to fix, Izuku stated, disengaging the guard. What problem? No solution is impossible, Mei asked, smiling. It needs to be easier to apply. Right now the equipping process is a bit lengthy. If I wanted to put this one on a hurry it wouldn't be possible. Either it has to come in parts one can just slap on or contained in a compact object that would engage in assembly on me with a simple command or action. Izuku answered, pulling the rubber off. That would be difficult but not impossible. It'll just take a lot longer to get it to the slap-on state. Mei replied, jotting down all new schematics and notes. I feel bad asking for so much. Especially since I don't feel like I'm giving back anything, Izuku admitted. You've helped me more than you know. She blushed, smiling up at him. They stood for a moment, making eye contact. Then Izuku's phone buzzed, breaking their eye contact. He reached into his pocket and pulled it out. He unlocked the phone and spoke. Hello, Mom. Where are you, Izuku? His mother asked. I'm at a friend's house, Izuku replied. Mei was a little offended by this, but not for being a friend. He didn't tell his mother who he was. This brought up deep, buried insecurities. If you don't get home soon, your dinner is going to get cold, his mother said, a bit of worry on her voice. Izuku sighed. I'll be home soon. Okay, I'll see you in a little bit, his mother replied, ending the call. Izuku locked his phone and dropped it in his pocket. I guess I'll be back in a few days. Take care, Izuku said, opening the door. She nodded. Take care. He looked back, about to say something, but decided against it. 5 months to go. 2 teenagers ripped loose explosion after explosion. Izuku and Katsuki had been sparring for what felt like hours. Neither of them had landed a clean hit. Even with overpowering Katsuki explosions, Izuku could gain no ground. This day was a battle of Quirk versus Quirk, no contact outside of using quirks. Otherwise, range and technique was all fair game. Katsuki had got into what was basically point-blank range. Izuku blocked the extended palm and pushed the blast aside. His blonde-haired friend was keen and quick. Izuku went in for an explosion to counter. With Katsuki's other hand, he blasted himself out of the way. He then pivoted on his foot and spun around. Midoriya could feel where he was. The green-haired teen sidestepped to his left. A blast of fire just missed him. Izuku telekinesis had almost evened the playing field between the two. An explosion collided with Izuku's back. This knocked him over. He rolled out of the way and blasted himself to his feet. Katsuki had missed a landing blast by inches. Izuku let loose a green explosion. The blonde-haired teen didn't have the space to completely dodge the blast. He was broadside by the hit, and only dampened it by pushing himself a bit to the right. Izuku blasted himself back a few meters. He tried something new. Empowering his telekinesis, he formed a fist in his head and shot it at Katsuki. It only had about 30 kilograms of force, but in the right place and speed it could still hurt. The telekinetic fist struck the blonde in the gut right around his diaphragm. Katsuki gritted his teeth and tried to catch up his breathing. That hit had knocked the air out of him for a moment. It was just above a weak punch. Katsuki sailed into the air, correcting his course with mini explosions. This attack was different. Katsuki went high. He started to spin in midair as he descended. Midoriya's senses panicked. He empowered both quirks. Izuku raised both hands. Using his telekinesis, he made a cone of psychic energy. Howitzer impact! Katsuki yelled only a few meters from Izuku. Nuclear blast! Izuku called out, letting loose a massive counter. The green and orange blasts were massive. They effectively cancelled each other out. When the dust had cleared, there was one winner standing, Katsuki. Izuku had been pummeled into the concrete. Not from Katsuki's explosion, but from his own. The green-haired teen was panting and his arms looked worse for wear. The blonde-haired teen was not doing much better. The green blast had just overpowered his own and the resulting heat and force racked his body. Holy shit. That's one hell of a finishing move. I'd recommend not using your telekinesis to shape it. Otherwise the recoil force will be too great. It also looks like your arms barely withstood that, Katsuki pointed out, standing above him. He reached out and offered Izuku a helping hand. Izuku gritted his teeth from the pain and let his friend pull him up. What was that, Katsuki? Did you create a wind vortex and use it to enhance the scale of the explosion? Izuku guessed, walking over to his backpack. He pulled out aloe vera and rubbed it into the skin on his arms. They had light burning all over. Fuck. You guessed that right off the bat. Holy shit, I was hoping it would keep you thinking for a bit. Katsuki was doing the same to treat his burns, which for once were actually worse than Izuku's. The green-haired teen's ringtone went off. The teen rose an eyebrow and saw the caller ID. He smiled and answered. This is unusual of you, Hatsum-san. You usually text, Izuku commented. I would have, but this is just too important. I want to hear your reaction. It's done, Mei replied. He could only imagine her grin right now. Midoriya was grinning too. What? Holy crap, that's good news. I'll come by in a few weeks to test it out. What? How come? I wanted to see you soon, Mei whined. It's finals week and I want to do my best. Teachers have been a bit of a hard ass since we put in our UA application. Izuku answered, wondering about her last statement. He could see her pouting. Alright, I guess that's a good enough reason. Come see as soon as finals are over. Mei compromised. I will. Izuku looked at Katsuki, who was glaring at him. I've got to go. I might start on fire if he glares any longer. See ya. Give him a good smack for me too. Mei cheered on before Izuku ended the call. What? I have a life too. Izuku shrugged, dropping the phone in the backpack. Who was that? You seemed real friendly with them, Katsuki pointed out. Izuku blushed at that statement. We're just friends. She's a mechanic and I've been testing out her gadgets. Why are you helping her when you have so much to do already? Katsuki asked, a bit of rage in his voice. I'm doing just fine. She's been helping me with my studies too, Izuku retorted, only realizing afterwards that was the wrong thing to say. Then what the fuck am I doing helping you? You went behind my back and got help even though I offered. Katsuki was about to go to blows. I asked for her help because you already have so much shit on your plate. I don't want to rely on you for everything. I have to carve my own path too, Izuku shouted back at him. The rage was dripping from his voice now. Well, fuck you then. Go get your fucking help. I'm not fucking doing it anymore. The blonde-haired teen picked up his bag and walked off. Izuku chastised himself, but decided going home was better than pursuing the other teen. 4 months to go. The workshop was dimmer than normal. It had been 2 months since he'd seen her. They had talked in texts and over calls, but nothing could replace talking to her in person. Mei was looking deathly. She looked like she had dove headlong into her work and gave up sleeping. Izuku knew better to focus on that first. The invention would come first and Mei's health would be his immediate next concern. The arm guard was in a few pieces. Wrist cuff, forearm guard, tricep guard, and should link were on the table. They're designed so that if any 2 adjacent pieces are equipped they will lock together, Mei declared, watching him with notebook in hand. Izuku grabbed the wrist piece and clasped it on. Next was the forearm guard. When it locked on, the mechanisms engaged and the wrist and arm part connected. Next was the tricep guard. The locking in place was normal. When it engaged it felt weird. Plates moved up from the forearm to the tricep, covering his elbow. Finally, the shoulder link, which was a small ring that clasped from shoulder top to armpit. When they engaged, metal plated moved over his shoulder. The joints were nice and allowed for full movement. A rubber layer had been installed into the metal plates and moved with them. Izuku determined that overall structural integrity was lower than before, but it would handle recoil better. He felt that was a fair trade-off. Wow, that's awesome. If I slapped them on, I could get on the move immediately and let them finish while I was moving, Izuku commented, smiling. The disengaged mechanism is now on every piece. 2-point system like before. You don't even have to wait for the piece to compress before you can take it off. The magnetic coupling goes first and the rest is an automatic process that can happen off you, Mei explained. Izuku nodded, finding the pressure points. The arm guard operated exactly as she stated. He set it back on the table. Then, as an off comment, you should make a suit out of this. Chest guard, greaves, and boots. Maybe even a helmet. Izuku struck his palm as he thought of an idea. You could apply this tech for firefighters, police officers, construction workers, or whatever else. It's so versatile. Of course, you think about everyone else. Maybe I'll submit that for my UA application. Mei grinned. Now, Mei-san, Izuku said, looking to Mei. This caught her off guard. This was the first time he had said her first name. If he didn't have her attention, he was now the only thing in her vision. I'm going to be checking up on you more often. You need to sleep. Your health has been declining so much, Izuku said, moving to her. He was standing in front of her. She looked up meekly and then away. I was planning to after I got the project done. She started to chuckle. It's not like I need that much sleep. No. You need to balance sleep and work. Sleep revives the body and heals our minor processes, Izuku said sternly. What he did next surprised her. He put 2 fingers on her chin and gently turned her head. Mei-san, I care about you. I hate to see what you have done to yourself. Izuka had the most sad look on his face that she had ever seen. This hurt more than the time she hurt him. She put her head on his shoulder. I'm sorry. You must know what it feels like, right? That burning determination, the drive? Mei blurted out. She felt his hands through her hair. His fingers were rough, but it was so gentle. I do better than anyone else. It's the only thing that keeps me going. But like any fire, you can't let it consume you, he said, welling up. Memories of his past flew through his head. All the hate. All the times he had been called a villain. All the pain that was caused trying to prove his worth. The inferno that was his determination could no longer be quelled at this point, merely directed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry you, Mei replied, feeling that burning sensation in her eyes. The telltale signs of crying. Izuka took a deep breath and one big sniffle. That's why I'm going to be here more. Someone's got to look out for you. Mei looked up and saw his teary eyes. She smiled. You big idiot. She initiated a tight hug. They held the hug a little longer than friends should. Izuka was the first to break the silence. Now get to bed. I'll be back tomorrow. If I'm out any later, my mom is going to send a search party. Mei laughed at that one. Then get going, Izuku, she replied, breaking away. He helped her clear off her cot. She sat down and watched him leave. He stopped at the door. It doesn't sound like you're getting to bed. Izuka chuckled, opening the door. Mei smirked. Here, I thought you liked the show. Izuku turned beet red. He fumbled his words, ending up saying nothing intelligible. He promptly left after that embarrassing display of what was basically his brain short-circuiting. After the door closed, Mei slumped her shoulders and yawned. She wondered what he thought of her as a woman. Physically, her body was failing her due to the lack of sleep. Emotionally, she never felt better. She had found a kindred soul. One that had been through much more strife than her. All that was on her mind was easing his pain. The instant she laid her head against the pillow, she paced it out. 2 months to go. Izuka had been over to her workshop so much that he had to finally tell his mom who she was and why. Inko backed off a bit, knowing he was at that age. Mei had been at the Midoriya household a few times after that. His mother liked her, but thought she was a little crazy. Not in a deranged way, but too much focused to be good. Mei had just finished the chest guard prototype. The first obstacle was that it had to be morphable enough to fit multiple body types. The second obstacle was that it had to stay on the user without magnetic coupling. She knew she could add a back piece to it that would connect to the chest, but most people that were police officers or firefighters received injuries from the front. So it was a point of cost-effectiveness to have a basic loadout, and then one for full protection. The chest guard covered from the collarbone to the just past the ribs before it deployed. Suction kept on the first piece, but after it deployed, 3 connectors would be formed in the back. The connectors were built as many swiveling and stretchable plates to allow full movement. Overall, the chest plate felt pretty good to have on. All right. Take that wrench of yours and hit me, Izuka requested. Mei had in hand a rather large wrench. Hardened steel, no less. She smirked and swung right in the middle of the chest. She was much stronger than she looked. Izuka grabbed his chest, gasping for air. I wasn't expecting that. Well, you said hit me, you didn't say how hard, Mei coyly replied. Nope. I deserve that, Izuka said, finally getting his breath before continuing. You might need more shock absorption. I still felt a lot of the force from that hit. I'm going to guess it's bulletproof at this point, but there are a lot of Quirks out there that can hit harder than that. The release points were just under the chest part of the gear and then on the back of the neck. The armor popped off Midoriya. He caught it in midair. She was jotted down his comments and anything else interesting. Placing the chest guard on her desk, he found a chair nearby. Izuka was looking over the schematic for the chest guard. Spending more time with her had the side effect of learning all the technical designs and terms she used normally. He still didn't understand the specifics, but he had a good enough grasp to know where improvements needed to be made. Hatsum finished her notes and sat at her chair. She sighed. Do you think I'll get into UA? This floored Izuku. She was the most brilliant person he knew. What are you talking about? There's no way that UA wouldn't accept you. He put a hand on her shoulder. Her muscles were a knotted mess. Izuka mouthed the while. Without being asked or even knowing she needed it, he stood up and set his fingers to massaging. The first time he had done this for her, he was a nervous mess. Izuku could barely keep his hands steady. But now it was like second nature. Hatsume's head slumped from the relaxing feeling. Then to his surprise a weak moan escaped her lips. This made him red in the face, but he pressed on. It didn't take long for her head to be on the desk just absorbing the massage. Why? I didn't ask. May wondered, feeling his fingers trace down her back, making circles as he went. Goosebumps crept onto her skin from the sensation. You need it. Just rest and take it, Izuku replied, adding his telekinesis to the mix to get the hard-to-reach inner muscle. That earned him a deep, long moan. Take it, huh? When did you become so assertive? May mused, imagining his reaction. He mentally punched himself. Him and his choice sometimes. I didn't mean that. I just want you to enjoy it and relax. Oh, trust me. I am enjoying this thoroughly, May admitted shamelessly. Izuku continued his assault, massaging her as thoroughly as he could. When he finished with her back, he moved to the arms. Instead of doing it his usual way, he was right behind her, leaning over her to reach. Her back was on his chest, and he felt strong. His muscles had been trained to be peak performance, and it was such a pleasant sight. She looked up at him and saw that determined look on his eyes. What she did next must have been unconscious, because there was no reason for her to do it intentionally. The pink-haired girl reached out and touched his triceps. He was leaning over her right side, trying to rub her wrist. This caught his attention, stopping him, but more important, getting him to look straight at her. They were face to face, no more than a dozen centimeters apart, 5 inches. Before he could realize how close he was, she brought her right hand to the back of his neck. She pulled and closed her eyes. She planted a kiss on his lips. Her heart soared. Izuku was panicking internally. This was his first kiss, and no less, it was completely unexpected. He admitted that it wasn't out of nowhere. Whether intentional or not, this tension had been building up between them. May, the initiator and the one in control, broke the kiss. It took a moment for her brain to catch up to her body. Both of their faces were red. She let go of him. The green-haired teen pushed aside his doubt and worry. He knew in that moment he had to reassure her feelings and assure her of his. He caressed her cheek with his right hand before kissing her back. The young man pulled her out of her chair. She draped her arms around his neck. His circled around her back. She was on the tips of her toes. Their kiss turned sloppy and passionate. Neither of them really had any experience, but they made up for it with desire. Her hands ran across his body. That's when Izuku's mind caught up finally. He broke the kiss but still held her. I want to know what this is first, Izuku managed to ask. She gazed deep into his eyes. The truth, May, she told herself. I've never done anything like that. But it felt so right. What do you want me to be? May reversed the question. That was actually unfair of May. Izuku had a duty as a hero to help, save, and defend. He knew that loved ones were always put in danger because of that. Many heroes solved that problem by having no one. But ultimately, that was an empty existence. Those heroes stopped being people and only focused on their work. That's not how Midoriya wanted to live. He wanted someone to care about him as a person, and the more the better. Friends and family is what gives us strength. If you have no one to fight for, then why are you fighting? The hesitation spoke volumes. She knew it was a difficult choice for him. But that didn't make it hurt any less. He was after a hero, and he needed to decide if both of their lives would be on the line. I want to believe that I can be more. That I can be better. May, I want you in my life. I also want you to be happy. Will this make you happy? Izuku somehow got her to shoulder the decision again. It will, May simply replied. Then will you be my girlfriend, May? Izuku asked, smiling. She smiled, tearing up. Yes, of course. They kissed again. Tears of happiness running down her cheeks. Izuku felt like that was better course of action than let desire and passion carry them away. They might have ended up doing something they both would have regretted. After this, May was much more peppy about her gadgets, and just everything in general. Izuku felt better to knowing a huge weight had been lifted. When they had to part ways, he was so excited he ran home. He knew he'd want to tell his mother right away. Unfortunately, for Izuku, this led to the awkward conversation about sex that he never wanted to hear from his mother. He knew enough already from health classes and the internet. By the end of the conversation, she offered to at least buy protection just in case. Izuku was laying in his bed. He had the thought to tell Katsuki, but they were on rocky terms for nearly a month. They still talked, but it was more strained than usual. Eventually, the young man gave up on that idea and just went to sleep. It was like a dream come true. The gates of UA were beautiful this time of year with the sakura trees in blossom. They were early. Izuku was vibrating with excitement and Katsuki just couldn't wait to get the practical exam. Neither of them knew what it was going to be, but any chance to use their quirks was welcomed. Students were filing in from all over the country just for their shot at UA. It was known as the most prestigious hero school around. "Let's get registered," Izuku said, striding forward. "I can't wait until I beat your shitty score and I see that look on your face," Katsuki mocked, grinning madly. "TCH. I just hope we're in different areas for the practical. As much as I'd like to complete directly with you, it would hurt both our scores," Izuku reasoned, walking through the front doors. "Greetings, which course for you two?" a man behind a clothed table asked. "Hero," they said in unison. The man smirked. "Names and contact information?" the man asked, moving around clipboards. "Izuku Midoriya," Izuku replied. "Katsuki Bakugo," Katsuki stated. "All right, got you both. Here's your numbers and down the hall to the left. Take a seat in the auditorium," the man instructed, handing them each a card with their name on it. The two teenagers went down the hall and into an already open set of doors. Very few applicants had shown up yet. They were among the first dozen or so. Izuku surveyed the room, looking for anyone that stood out. A man with sharp eyebrows stood out. Katsuki took his spot. The stage of the auditorium was still empty. Izuku decided if anyone was worth speaking to, it would be after in class. The last thing any applicant wanted was to strike up a friendly conversation with someone they might not see again. The green-haired boy took his spot. "Anyone catch your eye?" Izuku asked, reading over his card and the provided booklet in front of him. "These guys are all just extras. At least we won't be together," Katsuki replied, leaning on his palm. He had a lazy, bored look. "I saw. That's good. I can go all out without messing with you." Izuku couldn't help but smirk at that thought. In preparation of this event, they took a whole week off from using their quirks and just focused on basic maintenance exercising. "Like I said, be prepared to lose," Katsuki smirked. President Mike entered the room once enough applicants had shown up. He wasn't quite ready to start, but he was looking at the crowd. "Oh my god, is that President Mike? I love his radio show." Izuku fanboyed over the pro hero. This was much to the dismay of the applicants near him. Katsuki in particular could care less about the other pro heroes. "If you don't shut it, you're going to get called out," Katsuki pointed out. Izuku mentally karate chopped his train of thought and zipped his lips. After another 10 minutes, the lights were dimmed. President Mike started off. "Can I get a hello?" Literally, no one even tried to speak. Izuku considered it just to get a rise out of folks, but thought against it. President Mike whispered, or at least what he thought was a whisper. "Tough crowd. Welcome to the Hero Course exam. This will be a two-parter. One part written exam and the other will be the practical exam. Let's start by going over the practical exam rules and guidelines." The voice hero clicked a remote in his hand and the wall behind him clicked on. A screen with a robot showed up. "These faux villains will be your opponents. They are score from 1, 2, and 3 inch. President Mike clicked through the each slid, showing what they looked like. Fairly basic designs compared to anything May had constructed. "I believe there has been an error made." One applicant rose his hand. "There's a 0-point robot listed in the booklet. If this was some kind of error, it reflects poorly on UA." He was passionate. Midoriya had to give him that. President Mike's eye twitched. "I was just about to get to that big guy." The hero clicked again and flipped a shot of the 0-pointer compared to buildings. Izuku unconscious whistled at the size of that robot. "Exactly, this robot will be meant as an obstacle to overcome in the course and should be avoided at all costs," President Mike declared before shutting off the display. "First we will hand out the written exams and then give each of you gym clothes to your specified sizes. This is to promote fairness for grading purposes and assess your quirks. I don't need to tell you, quirks will be allowed for the practical exam." President Mike ended his speech. The lights flashed back on. Assistants handed out the written exam. It was like an SAT but slimmer. They had 2 hours to complete the 10-page assignment. Izuku shrugged. Just by a glance he realized that most of the questions were geared towards a grade lower than the one they would enter. Many of the applicants sailed through the written exam. The entire group was done in around 45 minutes. Gym uniforms were handed out and locker rooms were provided. In the locker room, See you at class. Kick ass out there, Katsuki. Likewise, Izuku. Katsuki smirked. The two teenagers gave a strong fist bump before parting ways. At Foe City B, Midoriya stretched out his legs and arms. A few of the applicants recognized him from TV. Whoa, that's Izuku Midoriya, a few of them whispered. After being featured on the local news and even congratulated on national TV by a few of the heroes present, the duo had made quite a name for themselves. Eventually, this led to Izuku's quirk, or at least part of it, getting revealed. The public reaction towards him was, to say, venomous. Despite what you guys might think of me, I wish all of you the best of luck, Izuku said, grabbing everyone's attention. The applicant before with sharp eyebrows pushed up his glasses and nodded. A few of the other applicants seemed to calm down after the tense air had been broken. But I'll be the first to say, Izuku raised his fist. Plus ultra! Several of the other applicants joined him. President Mike's voice came over the loudspeaker. All right. I hope all of you are ready. It's show time. Izuku rocketed forth. This guy gets it. There are no bells in a real scenario. Get out there and smash. Izuku had tore through nearly a dozen robots before he rocketed into the distance. He pitted the other applicants. They didn't have the power he had. Thanks to Hatsum, he had honed the skills of his weak telekinesis. He was now able to sense into sealed containers and pull or push the contents. It was much easier to do with inanimate objects, as their parts tend to be more static. Izuku had tried to do it with living objects, but if anything was moving like blood or water, it felt slimy to his telekinesis, and he stopped trying to mess with it after that. He did find out it would be possible to stop someone from breathing, but that felt really fucking villainous. Explode a bullet! Izuku shouted, firing off basically shaped explosions at robots. They were more precise and had some penetrating power. It was made possible by combining weak telekinesis and explosion. 10 minutes had passed. Izuku had scored a whopping 74 points. He was getting tired running around and combining quirks. Instead, he decided to take it easy and find some of the other applicants. Then the ground shook. What the? Izuku saw the ground split. He blasted himself away from the opening. Applicants started to run so soon as they felt it. The first movement it made shook the ground. The extra-large mech grabbed onto two buildings, causing rubble to fall all around it. Izuku felt like he was at a safe distance. Then he heard it. Help! A brown-haired girl called out from under some rubble. Her foot had been caught under a slab of concrete. The mech was approaching her. Applicants other than Izuku ran from the robots, still looking for other robots. Izuku made eye contact with her, and that's all it took. He soared across the ground, blasting his way over to her. He skidded to stop next to her and knelt down. Are you okay? Izuku asked, making the occasional glance at the giant robot. Yeah, my foot is pinned and I can't get out, she said, panicking. She was desperately trying to remove her foot before the robot got to her. The robot was on them. Shit! Brace yourself. This is going to be loud. Izuku channeled power into explosion. He then built up as much sweat as possible. Green lightning crackled over his skin. It was 3 seconds to death. Izuku brought up his arms, putting them wrist to wrist, much like a Kamehameha. Nuclear blast! Izuku shouted. Observation room. The teachers were watching the carnage from the comfort of their observation room. They were at the edge of their seats. The green-haired boy had just rocketed over to the pinned girl. Power loader, should we stop it? President Mike asked, watching potentially a horrific scene. I think he can do it. He didn't hesitate to check on her instead of just killing the mech first. Isawa pointed out. Let's see what he can do, Vladimir stated, weaving his fingers together. A few more seconds passed. The teachers were collectively starting to panic. Applicants getting hurt during the practical exam was common, but 2 deaths would be something else. Power loader, halt it! President Mike called out. Is that green lightning? Power loader pointed out. All Might was present and panicking just as much as everyone else. He more or less knew what Midoriya was capable of, but the next moment shocked everyone. The explosion that followed Midoriya's call-out was on another level. It had so much power it felt like they were experiencing an earthquake. It would be known later that day that explosion had tripped the local earthquake Richter scale. It was registered as a 4.6 on the scale. The giant mech was no more. The buildings around it had also been obliterated. Debris and rubble were falling from the collapsing buildings. The green-haired kid just stood there. It looked like he had broken his forearms, but was still conscious. The teachers let out a collective sigh. They all tallied points for the young hero. Back on the ground. Izuku's ears won't stop ringing. He had surpassed his limit, and then some. If he had known the effect was going to be that great, he would have just let loose a normal super blast. The pain in his arms was sharp and constant. Broken probably. But not shattered hopefully. He looked over to see the brown-haired girl standing up and away from him. She was trying to shout something at him. Izuku looked up and saw it. Before he could react, she had tackled him. A large chunk of rubble landed just where he had been standing. The ringing slowly subsided. Okay. Are you okay? The brown-haired girl was yelling at him. Broken arms, I think. Thanks for the save, Izuku said with her on top of him. Before he could warn her, she had picked up one of his arms to make sure nothing was sticking out. Another quirk appeared within his quirk space. Light green pads formed on his fingertips. Great, Izuku thought, sighing. How many points did you get? She asked him. 74 points. Until that thing came around, he replied, realizing that the robot wasn't in peace. It was vaporized by the force and heat his nuclear blast produced. Wow, 74? That's crazy high. I got 40. She stated, still hovering over him. A blush formed on her face and she jumped to her feet. I'm sorry. I did something without your permission, Izuku said, sitting up. What are you talking about? The blush had diminished a bit. My quirk dash. The end of match bell sounded off. Izuku let it finish before continuing. My quirk allows me to duplicate another person's quirk. It requires skin-to-skin contact and the effect is permanent. So you have my quirk now? She asked, a bit confused. Yup, he said, holding up his hand. Despite the pain, he could still move his arms. Using explosions hurt badly though. His other powers still functioned fine. The brown-haired girl saw the similar pads of skin that she had on him. Her gut reaction was to be afraid or disgusted, but he had just saved her life. He can't be a bad guy if he did that. I really am sorry. Normally, I warn people beforehand so they can avoid me, Izuku repeated, kneeling and bowing his head on the pavement. She was taken back by just how seriously he took his words. Midoriya's words were genuine, and he wanted her approval or punishment. Alright, how about this? Get to know my quirk and help me with it. I'll let you figure out the downsides, the brown-haired girl offered. Izuku raised his head. Thank you. What is this chivalrous display here? A small, old lady said next to Izuku. Who dash? Izuku's eyes widened. Recovery girl. The youthful hero. That's me. What seems to be your injuries? Chio asked, poking him with her cane. Broke my arms. She has a twisted ankle and her ears might still be ringing, Izuku said, pointing to the brown-haired girl. Heal her first. I've got to warn you first before you try to heal me, Izuku recommended. Chio rose an eyebrow but cooperated. The brown-haired girl let out a sigh of relief as her ankle mended itself. What's this warning now? Recovery girl asked. I know your quirk requires skin contact to work, but so does mine. If you touch me, I'll gain a duplicate of your quirk, Izuku warned her. What? That's it. I can see why you warned me, but more people that can heal. I'll take that any day. Just come visit before you use it. I hate for you to harm someone healing them. Chio chuckled, extending out her quirk and to kiss him. She planted one on his forearm. His bone cracked and moved. The power storage quirk forwarded the bill that would have been taken from Izuku. One question, can I use it on myself? Izuku asked, feeling another quirk pop into his quirk space. It unsurprisingly was a pill. The brown-haired girl's quirk manifested itself as a feeling rather than an object. Touching her quirk made his stomach turn a bit. The feeling was ferocity. No, you cannot, Chio said before waving goodbye. All applicants please report in. Present mic boomed over the loudspeakers, or in person it was hard to tell the difference. Midoriya stood up and faced the brown-haired girl. Izuku Midoriya. Ochako Uraraka. She bowed and he did in return. They walked together in silence back to the staging area. Before they went their separate ways. I'll see you at school, Uraraka-san, Izuku said, running off. She just blushed madly at that statement. He was plain-looking, but his muscles were sculpted from marble. A few thoughts floated around, making her blush more. Katsuki was waiting for Izuku outside of UA. How did you do, loser? Katsuki mocked. 74 points. You, Izuku replied. 93 points. Damn right. I beat you, Katsuki gloated. Let's wait for the official ranking before you say that. Izuku smirked. Were you that Quake? Katsuki asked dryly. Izuku looked at his arms, and they still ached a bit. The bones were healed, but the muscle was still recovering from the reverb. Yeah, I was. I went a little overboard. Broke both of my damn arms from the force. Izuku clenched his fist. You fucker. You broke all the glass from the skyscrapers in my testing ground. Had to spend a minute dodging all that fucking glass. Katsuki cursed, thinking about how far ahead he could have gotten if that hadn't happened. I just had to be the hero and go save someone. Obliterated the mech, most of the nearby buildings, and left myself deaf for a minute or two. Izuku chuckled, thinking about the silliness of the whole thing. You destroyed one of those giant fuckers? Katsuki asked, a bit of rage in his eyes. Yup. Didn't even need my extra powers. You probably could too. Izuku shrugged. Full power for me doesn't shake the ground like that, Katsuki pointed out. I didn't say I didn't go all out. I hit that mech with the most powerful blast I could muster. Izuku cupped his hand above his head, imitating the pose he took earlier. Katsuki analyzed his stance and went tch. If you close your fingers, more of the explosion would have been directed up. With open fingers like that, I would spread out at half potency. That's why the buildings around you got destroyed, Katsuki explained, making the proper stance. Oh right, our hands are the channel. Less area to spread out, the more it focuses. Izuku rubbed his chin, committing that to memory. Midoriya-san-jay! Uraraka yelled from the school's entrance. She sprinted to catch up to them. Uraraka-san? Izuku called out, turning to see her. Who's this round face? Katsuki clicked his tongue. I saved her in the practical, Izuku said to just Katsuki. Should I call you the knight in shining armor then? Katsuki joked. How did you guys get out so quickly? She asked, catching her breath. Well, round face when you're as great as us. They just knew we passed, Katsuki boasted. Izuku shot his friend a look and sighed. We had finished all the paperwork pre-hand and they let us go right away. Was there some optional paperwork of something? She asked. Yeah. They were in a separate form. It was some Quirk garbage. Katsuki hand waved. Uraraka groaned before looking Izuku straight in the eyes. Thank you for saving me. She bowed while blushing furiously. Izuku blushed, feeling like this was some kind of confession. You're welcome? I'll see you in class, Midoriya-san, she said, walking past them. What was that? Katsuki asked. I don't know. Never had someone thank me before. Izuku shrugged. His phone suddenly vibrated. He pulled it out and read the message. Wrench, how'd it go? Did you feel that explosion? We had to reset the whole workshop after that. Who's that? Katsuki asked, raising an eyebrow. Oh, Hatsum-san. She was that mechanic I was helping, Izuku replied, texting back. It went great. I was that explosion, sorry. Katsuki narrowed his gaze. Rage and anger set in. Is she your support? I bet she'll be at UA, so she's be everyone's support, Izuku retorted. Wrench, that registered on the Richter scale. Are you okay? I broke my arms, but I'm fine now. Izuku looked up to see Katsuki walking off. The green-haired boy frowned. Wrench, only you would say that so casually. I'll talk to you later. I think I pissed off Katsuki. Wrench, oh no! He locked his phone and rushed after his friend. Katsuki, are you okay? Izuku asked, knowing what the answer would be. Fine enough, Katsuki replied, glaring at Izuku. I can tell you're pissed. Izuku got in front of his friend and crossed his arms. If you don't move, I'm going to punch you in the face. Katsuki was dead serious. Izuku sighed and dropped his arms to the side. I'll see you at school then. Izuku shrugged, running ahead. At Mei's workshop. Izuku had cleaned up the entire shop and boxed as much as he could. For once he knew what the floorboards looked like. He marveled at the fact that there was floor under all the junk and parts. The green-haired teen was waiting for his girlfriend to get back. It wasn't a question if she passed or not, it was whether it would take all day. The door slammed open. Hatsum's clothes were all black from soot. She looked tired. Wow, that looks like they put you through the ringer, Izuku commented, closing up the last box. I got in! She jumped at him. She knocked him over and they were on the floor. Ow, that hurt, Izuku replied, trying to keep his arms from her. Oh, right, I forgot. Sorry, babe, she said, kissing his cheek. It's fine. I got in too, Izuku stated. What, you know already? I thought the hero course had to wait until the week was over? Mei asked, sitting on the floor next to him. I scored 74 points. Katsuki got 93, so I'm in if I think about the extra parts of the course. Izuku smirked, clenching his fist. Extra parts? Mei asked, genuinely curious. There was a giant robot that was worth nothing. I thought it was odd that would be a part of the test. Why have something we have to avoid? I guessed it was because in real situations there are powerful villains that should be avoided if you don't have a compatible quirk. But when someone was under the rubble, I realized what it really was about. They had picked a place with the most people to deploy the robot. It was a test to see if anyone had heroic qualities. Izuku explained before continuing. And guess who has heroic qualities? He pointed his thumbs at himself. Mei couldn't help but giggle and smile. She gripped him into a hug. I'm so glad what we got in. He squeezed her back. Me too. This is like a dream come true. She kissed him on the lips. No matter how many times it happened, it just felt too surreal. I hope you don't get too mad I cleaned up your whole area, Izuku said, gesturing to the boxes. No, actually that helps a lot. I figured I should pack up and see if the school will take all of my scrapped projects and parts. Mei stated, seeing the only thing out was his hero costume parts. She knew she had to submit them for his suit. Power Loader Sensei had pulled her aside after passing her and asked about it. She had told him that she had been working on it for months and what kind of quirk that Izuku had. It was a challenge to develop for and even harder to make it universally applicable. But Izuku had found a way. Did you tell your parents yet? Izuku asked her. She huffed and looking around annoyed. I'll take that as a no, he said, pulling her onto his lap. Izuku gently made her look at him. Go spend the next few weeks with them. You need to reconnect. They have a right to now. Izuku gave her an unwavering look. She huffed. Okay, I will. Would you come with me? Nice try. I have a very protective mother to go to. She's probably dying to know how it went. I bet your parents will be thrilled to see you. Especially because you look better, Izuku retorted. So I'm pretty now? Mei smirked, caressing his cheek. You're the most beautiful pink-haired girl I've ever laid eyes on. Izuku kissed her. Thank you, she said, breaking away. He stood up, picking her up in the process. She was in his arms, bridal style. I've never get used to that, Mei commented, resting her head on his shoulder. He walked over to the cot and set her down gently. Go in the morning. If you still can't do it, come get me, Izuku offered. Aren't you going to tuck me in? She asked, pouting with a hint of seduction. Izuku chuckled. As much as I'd love that. You are not tempting me before I turn 16. So what I'm hearing is that I've only got to wait a few months. She smirked, pulling him down for a kiss. We'll see about that when we get there. Izuku smiled before leaving her. Midoriya household. Mom, I'm home, Izuku yelled when he entered. His mother stood up from the couch and crossed her arms. Oh no, he was going to get it. Where were you? I was at Hatsume's place. Why did I miss anything? He replied. That's when he saw All Might's thin form sitting on the couch. His mind went into panic mode and then into why mode. Tashinori-san is going to be one of your teachers and said that he'd like to personally talk to you. He's worried about your quirk. Inko answered, worry plastered all over her face. This meant two things. 1, he was in officially now. 2, he'd have to reveal more of his quirk to his mother. He had never really fully explained it to her. She knew he could use other people's quirks, but thought it was temporary. He only let her keep that delusion because he was afraid on how his own mother would feel about him. Hello, Tashinori-sensei, he said, bowing. All Might waved off the gesture. Mrs. Midoriya, you might want to sit for this, Yagi said, frowning. Izuku and Inko came into the living area. I can explain better. I'd rather you not, Tashinori-sensei, Izuku requested. All Might gestured for him to continue. Mom, I sort of lied to you all those years ago. My quirk actually allows me to completely copy another person's quirk. I get to use it as if I was born with it. I'm sorry for lying, but I was so scared of it when I was younger, Izuku explained. Inko was more taken back by the lie than the truth, but she would be lying if she wasn't a bit scared of a power like that. That makes so much more sense about Katsuki's quirk and mine, Inko admitted. I also have quite a few other people's quirk now, including Tashinori-sensei's quirk, Izuku admitted. This fact caused Inko to turn to All Might. She was about to apologize, but he waved her off. Just how many do you have now? All Might asked, wondering about the answer. The green-haired teen held up 6 fingers. He then named them, dropping a finger for each one. Weak telekinesis, explosions, power storage, zoom, zero gravity, and heal. All Might recognized that last one. He'd have to talk to Chio about it. I'm here to ask for a blood sample. This is simply a security measure considering just how powerful your quirk is. Tashinori deadpanned. I understand. Yue is afraid of the villain potential involved with me, and considering my history I could easily be the biggest risk. Izuku grimaced, staring All Might down. For once in All Might's life he felt determination greater than his own. This young man's pride would never break. He could never be a villain. But there were questions being asked. People making comparisons to history. Someone's wanting security. Others wanted to know if they're related. Since All Might was his only contact point, it was safe to assume he'd be willing to cooperate if asked by the number 1 hero. Nothing about this felt right, and all of it left a bad taste in his mouth. Look, I'm Dash. All Might started before getting cut off by Izuku. Let's just get this done with. You'll be my instructor soon enough, so we can talk more then. All Might nodded and opened a suitcase on the coffee table. It was a syringe gun, mostly likely set up to pull instead of shot. The skeleton of man walked over to Izuku. His arms were still exposed from the entrance exam. This is when Inko noticed the slight discoloration of his arms. She gasped. Izuku, what happened? I let out a blast so big it vaporized a 10-story mech and wrecked the buildings next to it. Izuku answered with no emotion at all. Izuku, I understand that you've had your convictions challenged and know that I will always be here for you. Inko offered. I relish the challenge. Let people look down on me. Let them think of me as a villain. But when the cards are down and no one's left, I will still be standing, willing to protect everyone in my vision and stop any villain that crosses my path. I understand that I have to put in 10 times more work to create my public image and maintain a positive one. I won't have the luxury of making mistakes. I won't have the luxury that villains will get blamed for the damage or the quirks being used. I have to be conscious of my power moment to moment, or I might use the wrong one. Worse if I get an incapable quirk and suddenly I'm a liability on the scene. Izuku ranted, his anger threatening to boil over. While he was monologuing, the boy had used telekinesis to nudge a vein in his closer to the surface. All Might knew he would be a challenge, but he wasn't prepared for his student being even more aware of his own problems than anyone could have guessed. Izuku took a deep breath. I'm sorry. He walked off to the bathroom and got a band-aid. He applied it to his arm via telekinesis. The teen looked to the two standing in the living room. He decided he wasn't hungry that night and went to bed. I'm sorry, Midoriya-san. I never realized that the problem was so deeply rooted in society. If your son becomes a hero, Dash. It was Inko's turn to interrupt All Might. He will become a hero. I have no doubt in him. I only ask that you make sure to keep him humble. As he continues to grow and gain quirks. I doubt your school will be able to train his quirk any longer. Just make sure his personality and goals remain intact. The rest he can figure out himself. Inko stated, sitting down. Now that you have your blood. Please leave, Tashinori-san. That was all. Inko ended any further dialogue they would have. Yue would have to tread carefully now. They had started off on the wrong foot, and it would take a miracle to gain her trust again. All Might left and felt drained. He'd have to report all of that back to the administration and to the police. They didn't have a sample of his blood, but if they ever did, then answers would be had. Izuku was laying on his bed, relaxing for once. It had been a hectic winter vacation. Mei was with her parents, and they were trying to catch up all the missing time with their now support class daughter. A knock came at the door. Izuku. You got a letter in the mail from Yue. While he had known he was in, it would be interesting to read the acceptance letter. The teen got up and opened his door. His mother handed him the letter. On the spot he used a bit of telekinesis to slice open the top. He pulled out a disc. Izuku rose one eyebrow and looked at his mother. They went into the living room. He set the device down on the coffee table. Tapping the top of it, a holographic image started to play. It was All Might in a pinstripe suit. He had a microphone. Hello, Izuku Midoriya, this is your official acceptance message into Yue. You might be wondering about the entrance exam and just exactly how we were judging it. Well, I have to say, Dash. All Might started before a hand showed up on screen urging him to get on with it. All Might whispered, I have 35 more of these to get to. Okay, I'll keep this short. The large man cleared his throat. Of all the applicants there that day, you were one of the 2 that were rewarded for truly being a hero. The camera swept to a scoreboard. Izuku saw his score. Izuku Midoriya, 132 points, 74 villain, 58 rescue. Katsuki Bakugo, 93 points, 93 villain. Uchako Uraraka, 72 points, 40 villain, 32 rescue. These were the only ones he could read before the camera panned away from the board. Congratulations, Midoriya. I think that was a performance worthy of being the symbol of peace. You inspired another to act heroically. I'll see you at UA. The hologram died after All Might gave a thumbs up. Tears of joy were streaming down Inko's face. Izuku was doing his best to keep his composure, but he broke as well. Tears streamed down his face. His mother brought him into a hug. You got in. You were the best too, no less. Thank you. This is like a dream come true. I'm going to be a hero, Mom, Izuku said, sniffling. His mother broke from the hug. She caressed his cheek. I know, and you're going to worry me sick, Inko admitted, smiling and crying. Don't worry, Mom. I can look after myself. I'm more worried about my classmates than anything right now, Izuku admitted back. Why's that? Inko asked. What if they find out about my quirk? What if they are scared of me? I want to have friends and be recognized for who I am, Izuku pleaded. Honey, I'm sure you'll make friends. You got a girlfriend all on your own. I think once people let you in, they will love being around you, Inko assured him. Thank you, Mom. That means a lot to me, Izuku said, wiping the tears away. I'm going to send a letter to see if I can ask to modify the school uniform a bit. You're going to ask for gloves, aren't you? Inko said, finally done crying. You betcha. I want people to know that I'm aware of what my quirk is, Izuku proudly stated. All right. Hop to it then, Inko commanded, pushing him up and off the couch. She couldn't help but smile for her son. Izuku spent an hour or 2 wording the letter. He wanted to be polite, but straightforward. By the point of frustration trying to balance the 2, he gave up and went with purely straightforward. First day of class, Katsuki's POV. Katsuki and his green-haired friend arrived early as planned. The blonde-haired had done his best to prepare for this day. What he didn't expect was to lose to the Izuku. The green-haired twerp had actually beaten his total score, and not by a little. It was by over 40%. This meant to Katsuki that if want to be the better hero of the 2, he'd have to put in 40% more work than Izuku. This was a problem. The twerp's work ethic was nothing to scoff at. All of this gave him a bad taste. He liked his friend, hell, basically his only friend. But if he wanted to grow and become his own hero, it would have to be without Izuku. The 2 teens entered the grand school. There was a floor map in the lobby. Katsuki gave it one glance before knowing where to go. Izuku spent a minute or 2 looking it over before catching up with the blonde. Looking for where your girlfriend will be? Katsuki smirked, hoping to get a rise out of him. He hadn't officially told Katsuki yet, but you'd have to brain dead to miss the signs. Izuku stumbled over his words. This delighted the blonde. He'd have to come clean. Yes, I was. I sort of forgot to tell you. Izuku finished rubbing the back of his neck. His friend had the easiest facial expressions to read. Don't think this shit makes you better than me, Katsuki retorted. The blonde chastised himself. He had the tendency to just say shit with thinking about. Most of the time, it was brutally honest and folks hated that shit. Izuku sighed. Oh no, not another lecture from his friend. It doesn't. Katsuki rose an eyebrow at that. That wasn't the expected response, and the straightforward statement was meant to hide more buried issues. The blonde wasn't one to care much. It also was none of his business. He decided not to pursue the subject. Well, we're here. Let's see what kind of freaks we got stuck with. Katsuki chuckled, slamming open the sliding door. There were only 2 students already sat, and neither of them flinched. Based on the white-haired kid's stoic face and bored expression, he must have been one of the recommendations. The other student was a prim and proper chick that had matured well past her years. Katsuki only gave her one glance before finding a seat. He chose a spot near the window. The girl was in the front middle and the white-haired guy was off to the right near the back. That was when Izuku did something Katsuki hadn't expected, introduced himself. The green-haired teen stood at the front of class. Izuku Midoriya, The next symbol of peace, his friend said, bowing. That was a bold move to pull. The girl stood up and returned his gesture. Momo Yaoyorozu. She bowed. The white-haired guy glared at Izuku but did not make an effort to introduce himself. A bit rude, but expected. Yaoyorozu. Like the Yaoyorozu hero family? Izuku asked, smirking. Katsuki was genuinely interested in where this was going. Momo hesitated before nodding. Well, hot damn, a legacy, Katsuki thought. What came next surprised the blonde. All right, princess, I hope we can get along in the future. Izuku bowed once more before taking a seat behind Katsuki. He didn't have to see her face to know she was blushing at that. It was just too forward not to get that sort of reaction. White gloves? Trying to be stylish or some shit like that? Katsuki whispered, pointing to the gloves Izuku was wearing. Izuku made no attempt to whisper back. You know why I'm wearing these, Katsuki? I want to limit my quirk, not expand it. This caught the white-haired kid's attention. His mind must be racing trying to figure out Izuku. Which was for the best. Even Katsuki saw the potential danger that Izuku's quirk possessed. The blonde shrugged and rested his feet on his desk. Izuku's POV. Many of the other students showed up early. One guy in particular decided to pick a verbal fight with Katsuki, and his choice of lounging. Izuku shrugged and figured it would sort itself out. He had bought several new notes books. Everyone here had a quirk, and he was going to catalog all of them. It was a minute to the bell and Midoriya had sketched out many of his fellow classmates. Katsuki, just comply. Class is about to start. Izuku stated, still drawing his classmates. His friend grumbled before complying. Thank you. I'm Tenya Ida. The tall teen bowed to Izuku. Izuku looked up at the man. The last name was familiar. He's from a hero family too, Izuku made a mental note. Izuku Midoriya, next symbol of peace, Izuku stated. The whole class fell silent hearing him. The green-haired teen looked around, seeing a combination of shock and amusement. And one invisible girl he obviously couldn't read. He added a mental note for that one. A yellow sleeping bag opened the door. It somehow shimmied over to the podium. A man emerged from the sleeping bag. What a well-mannered class. Exactly on time, no less, the tired teacher stated. He looked like he hadn't slept in months, which was a bit contradictory considering he came in wearing a sleeping bag. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. We're going to start off things quick, Aizawa announced, smirking. Back in middle school you all took tests to determine your physical aptitude. Those tests are inaccurate. They cut out quirks from the equation to get standard guidelines. Government still has a way to go before quirks are recognized as being crucial to early development. Anyway, we are going to correct that problem. Today I'm going to have all of you take the 8 tests with your quirks in mind, Aizawa explained. Now get changed into your gym uniforms and head outside, Aizawa declared, already heading out. The whole class quickly followed his orders. Practice field, Uraraka's POV. The gym clothes were nice and breezy. They weren't too tight either. Izuku and a girl named Momo had beaten most of the class out to the field. It looked like they had just ended a pretty serious conversation. Ochako wondered what it was about. She knew about his quirk, but not many did. It was probably best that way. The homeroom teacher freaked her out a bit. Mostly because he looked tired and had this intense aura about him. Midoriya, what was your best throw in middle school? The teacher said, tossing him a ball. 47 meters. Izuku replied, pulling off his right-hand glove. Now throw it, will your quirk? Aizawa asked. Uraraka panicked briefly. Izuku's friend, Katsuki, she thought she heard, knelt down. Uraraka followed his lead, knowing what would happen next. Izuku shrugged and then he turned serious. The green-haired teen wound up his arm. Green lightning flowed from his arm. A few of the other students got the hint from Uraraka and Katsuki to brace for impact. Even though she had seen the limit break ability, the force would still be astonishing. A green explosion rocketed the ball into the distance. A shockwave slammed the ground from the blast. The ball had broken the sound barrier, albeit only temporarily. A few of the girls and smaller guys got knocked over by the blast. For Izuku, that throw was just a normal run-of-the-mill use of his quirks. Uraraka felt a bit scared of power like that. Aizawa whistled. 1,252 meters. That's one of the more impressive scores I've seen from first years in a while. Now that's an example of what I mean by using your quirks. In these next tests you can use your quirk any way you see fit to complete the test. A guy with red spiky hair shouted. This will be fun. That comment seemed to set Aizawa off. If you think this is going to be all fun and games, then I'll add a condition. The person in last place is going to be expelled. Panic set in for Uraraka. She wasn't the most athletic, and compared to some of the other students her chances looked bad. Aizawa's POV. These kids don't seem to understand the gravity or importance of being here yet. I'll just have to beat it into them then, the pro thought, eyeing the class. Most of the students were trying to figure out how to use their quirk and complete the mundane activities. Nearly half the class, though, had far more than a basic grasp of their quirk. There was one kid that the pro had to watch in particular. Izuku Midoriya, a student with a quirk so ridiculous sounding Aizawa didn't believe it at first. But now, seeing it firsthand, he knew it was the real deal. Quirk duplication. The thought of such a powerful quirk gave him a chill up his spine. However, if Aizawa had learned one thing by watching the kid, it was this: he was determined to be a hero. Well, in his words, the symbol of peace. As if such a goal was easy. Aizawa never liked the idea of the symbol, but couldn't argue its effectiveness. One thing was certain: heroes should count themselves lucky that Izuku is on our side. That power in the wrong hands would be devastating. It was interesting to see the original user of explosions, Katsuki Bakugo, outperform Izuku at basically every competition where both of them could use their matching quirks. It also seemed like that green explosion was a combo quirk and not his quirk's influence. Aizawa's notes. Midoriya, 50-meter dash, 4.22 seconds, grip strength, 115 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared. Long throw, 1252 m. Most of other tests he was near the top. Izuku is basically in peak physical condition. Bakugo, 50-meter dash, 3.98 seconds, grip strength, 82 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared. Long throw, 1083 m. Again top-end performer. Scores to Izuku were nearly the same. Must have trained together for an extensive amount of time. Uraraka, 50-meter dash, 7.12 seconds, grip strength, 35 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared. Long throw, infinity. Low-end performer but understands the real-world applications of her quirk. Todoroki, 50-meter dash, 5.63 seconds, grip strength, 83 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared. Long throw, 483 m. Has considerable control over the ice half of his quirk. Did not show any attempt to use the fire half, even though it would have helped. Top physical conditioning. Ida, 50-meter dash, 3.02 seconds, grip strength, 86 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared. Long throw or kick, 592 m. Powerful speed enhancing quirk, understand. In great physical condition. Koda, 50-meter dash, 6.95 seconds, grip strength, 105 kilograms, standing long jump, 55%, long throw bird drop, 620 m. Has a large strong body but is afraid to use it. Quirk is odd but useful in a naturalist setting. Tokoimi, 50-meter dash, 6.75 seconds, grip strength, 53 kilograms, standing long jump, 40%, long throw, 635 m. Relies too much on his quirk. Low level of physical prowess. Shoji, 50-meter dash, 6.80 seconds, grip strength, 540 kilograms, standing long jump, 45%, long throw, 280 m. Is physically fit to near peak. Quirk has limited combat uses. Kirishima, 50-meter dash, 6.72 seconds, grip strength, 77 kilograms, standing long jump, 53%, long throw, 195 m. Quirk doesn't augment strength much. Physically fit enough to be mid-high tier. Sato, 50-meter dash, 5.96 seconds, grip strength, 322 kilograms, standing long jump, 94%, long throw, 360 m. Quirk has a fairly short duration for a subtle return. A small cooldown period between uses. Jairu, 50-meter dash, 7.03 seconds, grip strength, 29 kilograms, standing long jump, 60%, long throw, 102 m. In low physical condition. Quirk has limited combat applications. Zero, 50-meter dash, 6.72 seconds, grip strength, 73 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared, long throw, 310 m. Significant understanding of quirk application and limits. Middle-level physical fitness. Aoyama, 50-meter dash, 5.51 seconds, grip strength, 58 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared, long throw/blast, 340 m. Low physical condition. Quirk is fairly powerful but seems to have severe recoil. Yaoyorozu, 50-meter dash, 5.32 seconds, grip strength, 71 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared, long throw, 612 m. Has exceptional use of her quirk. High-end physical conditioning. Ojiro, 50-meter dash, 5.49 seconds, grip strength, 108 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared, long throw, 203 m. Peak physical conditioning. Has excellent incorporating of his quirk into everything he does. Ajui, 50-meter dash, 5.58 seconds, grip strength, 32 kilograms, standing long jump, cleared, long throw or tongue pult, 326 m. Mutant type that understand for well how to use her quirk. Ashido, 50-meter dash, 5.22 seconds, grip strength, 33 kilograms, standing long jump, 60%, long throw, 93 m. Versatile if not deadly quirk. Has a significant grasp over how to apply the quirk. Middle tier physical condition. Hagakure, 50-meter dash, 7.05 seconds, grip strength, 22 kilograms, standing long jump, 45%, long throw, 45 m. Low-end physical conditioning. Quirk is for stealth only. Mineta, 50-meter dash, 7.20 seconds, grip strength, 36 kilograms, standing long jump, 30%, long throw, 38 m. How did they make it in? Only excelled at one event but otherwise not hero material. Kaminari, 50-meter dash, 6.99 seconds, grip strength, 65 kilograms, standing long jump, 57%, long throw after second try, fried the first one, 42 m. Low-end physical prowess. Heavily reliant on quirk to solve problems. It was underhanded of Aizawa to try this, but he had to test his quirk against the teen's quirk. Being the teacher, he decided to make Izuku take the long throw test over again. Before the moment of release, Aizawa activated his quirk. Much to his annoyance, nothing happened. Izuku was immune to his quirk. Suddenly, a whole world of possibilities died. He didn't know if it was due to the nature of Izuku's quirk, or because there were too many active quirks. Nevertheless, this was a problem he'd have to report about later. He had been jotting down notes about a few of the unused quirks and other notes about the ones with powerful, versatile quirks. Momo Yaoyorozu, despite having a less than useful combat quirk, managed to outperform and surpass her fellow student using wit and ingenuity. Her quirk was beyond versatile, but required a sound mind and time to function. In a real scenario, she would most likely be a liability, but then again Aizawa has been wrong in the past. After each student had finished the final test, Aizawa tallied up the scores and sent them to a digital board on in the field, highest to lowest performer. Momo Yaoyorozu, Katsuki Bakugo, Izuku Midoriya, Shoto Todoroki, Tenya Ida, Kumikage Tokoemi, Mizo Shoji, Mashireo Ojiro, Eijiro Kirishima, Mina Ishido, Ochako Uraraka, Koji Koda, Rikido Sato, Tsuya Ajui, Yuga Oyama, Denki Kaminari, Kyoka Jairu, Toru Hagakure, Minoru Mineta. Several members of the class panicked. This brought more joy to Aizawa than it should have. He shrugged. Better tell them. It was a logical ruse. I made that rule so all of you would give it your all. Momo spoke up before anyone else. Oh, I thought you guys knew that. It was pretty obvious. Izuku chuckled at the comment. Look, I beat you again, Katsuki pointed out. The green-haired teen waved him off. A light rivalry. That's good, Aizawa thought, watching the two. All right, let's pack it up and get back to class. Izuku's POV. The rest of day was pretty normally. Like really normal. English, history, mathematics, and sciences were before lunch. Math and science were pushed to after lunch due to Aizawa's spur-of-the-moment lesson. It was lunchtime. Izuku took a seat at one of the many tables. Uraraka, Ida, Katsuki, and Kirishima took spots next to him. Katsuki was across from him with Kirishima to his side. Uraraka was to Izuku's left, and Ida to his right. The hero-to-be wasn't used to so many people next to him. Aizawa-sensei really put us through the ringer, huh? Izuku commented, trying to break the ice. Uraraka was the first to reply. I know, right? I was so sure I'd get canned. She chuckled, drinking some kind of juice. It wasn't that bad, really. Katsuki commented, earning an elbow to the side from Izuku. Okay, maybe it was a bit unfair to do that on day one. But this is UA after all, and if you want to be the best then you have to go the distance. Katsuki shrugged, digging into his lunch. Well said. So far this is what I imagined UA would be like, but I've got 3 years to determine if this was the right choice. Ida chimed in, drinking orange juice. It is. UA is the school of champions and of the greatest heroes. Well, it will be once we graduate from here, Izuku declared. The rest of them smiled and looked at Izuku. Kirishima spoke up. That was manly as hell. I see why you like this guy Bakugo. Katsuki palmed the guy's face and pushed him over. It ain't like that. He's the only one that's good enough to be my rival. Yeah, sure, whatever you say, man. Kirishima shrugged, getting back to the table. He's mostly right. After all, do you think this guy could make any friends? Izuku chuckled, patting Katsuki's shoulder from across the table. The death glare from Katsuki spoke to how he felt about that one. Uraraka whispered to Izuku. You really pissed him off with that one. Izuku whispered back. I know. He's kinda sensitive right now. Uraraka gasped quietly. What did you do? He whispered back. Why do you blame me? I don't have the slightest clue. Uraraka sighed and shook her head. The rest of the group sat in silence for the remainder of lunch. Outside UA after class, Izuku was cleaning up his books and prepping his backpack. Katsuki had gone ahead. He was in a bad mood after all. Ida and Uraraka stayed behind. Midoriya-san, did you ever get a chance to work with my Quirk? Uraraka asked, standing next to him. I've been a bit afraid to actually. It's zero gravity, right? Izuku asked, knowing the answer. Yup, that's my Quirk. Looking for a crash course? Uraraka asked, smiling a bit. Ida was looking confused. He has your Quirk? Permanently? Ida crooked an eyebrow. Izuku sighed. Yes. Forever. But I know next to nothing about it, so I've kept it off just to prevent any problems. So what, you just touch someone and you'd get their Quirk? Ida asked in unison with Uraraka. You can shut them off. Sort of. I can't copy most mutant quirks. Also, yes, I can. Passive quirks can't be shut off. Active quirks can be, Izuku explained, draping his backpack over his shoulder. I'm a mutant type, which means you can't get mine, Ida stated, nodding. Bingo. He turned to Uraraka. If you don't have anything planned, I'll take you up on your offer. She blushed, not realizing he'd actually accept. I thought you liked to learn the quirks, she assumed. Oh, I do. But I've got to do a session with Recovery Girl too, so I prefer the help, Izuku admitted. That's for quirks so far. I might have misjudged your character, Ida apologized. Don't worry about it. Everyone does. I've been trying to avoid gaining quirks. I'm not power hungry or so deranged that I think I need all that power. Izuku smirked, leading the two. Do you know a park or place we can practice quirks without too many prying eyes? Uraraka asked. I do know a place, but I don't know if she'll let us use it. Izuku rubbed his chin in thought. Oh, okay, I'll just follow you, Uraraka replied. By this point they were exited the building. Hatsum was waiting for them. Izuku, how did your first day go? She hugged him. This caused the two with Izuku to feel a bit awkward. It was great, Mei. I didn't see you at lunch, Izuku asked. Mei pulled away from him. They have us with the business class so we can socialize, Mei said, making air quotes. She looked at the two heroes. Mei Hatsum. Tenya Ida. Tenya bowed. Ochako Uraraka. Ochako bowed. Nice to meet Izuku's classmates. I'm your support specialist. Mei beamed at them. Did you finish the suit? Izuku asked, continuing to leave. Mei, oddly enough, was walking backward, keeping pace with them. I did. It'll be ready tomorrow. I hear from Power Loader this will be your first time donning it, so kick-ass. Mei chuckled. Mei took a moment to give Uraraka a once-over. She was way more attractive than Mei had first thought. That's great news. Do you mind if we stop by your workshop and put in some quirk work? Izuku asked Mei while pointing between him and Uraraka. His girlfriend was about to glare, but thought against it. This was an excellent opportunity to scope out the competition. Sure. If it's for training her quirk, then I'll allow it, Mei said, smiling. At the front gate, Ida parted ways and said his goodbyes for the night. Uraraka knew she was the third wheel, but Izuku did his best to make her feel comfortable and a part of the conversations. She might be his friend on day, and he didn't want to create a divide between them. At Mei's workshop. Since they had packed up shop, Izuku had decided to furnish the now studio. It had a couch, coffee table, and a TV on a stand. Her cot was in the corner of the room. The workbench was still there. Mei sat on the couch and sipped tea. Uraraka and Izuku sat on the floor. "All right, activate it," Uraraka commanded. She was more stern than normal. She must take her quirk very seriously. Izuku closed his eyes. Turning off a quirk was simple. It felt like you were just saying stop to the quirk. But turning it on meant he had to go within his quirk space and touch it. Her ferocity coursed into his body. There was more passion in her body than meets the eyes. "Uraraka-san, why do you want to be a hero?" Izuku asked, opening his eyes. His intense gaze made her blush. It wasn't a very intimate question, but one that a hero must face before committing to it. "I don't know if I want to tell you. It's kind of a selfish reason," Uraraka replied, fumbling with her fingers. "There are many reasons heroes become what they are. I'm sure yours isn't that bad," Izuku assured. "I am in for the money. I want my parents to live a good life off me," Uraraka stuttered a bit. Izuku nodded. It was a noble reason after all. "I think that's noble of you. It sounds like you just want to help them out," Izuku pointed out. No, it's not. It's selfish," she denied. Izuku smirked. Before him were years of doubt. It bothered him to see someone with so much passion doubt themselves. Before the tension grew too much. "How about your quirk? It's on. I see the pads. How do they work?" Her passion returned. "Oh, it's easy really. When all 5 pads from one hand touch an object, it loses all the gravity being applied to it." "What about inertia?" Mei asked from the couch. "Inertia?" Uraraka asked, looking at her. "It's the tendency for objects to continue when outside forces are no longer being applied to them. If you removed gravity, which keeps us on the ground, then the inertia from the spinning of Earth would launch you tangentially off the crust. But that's not what your quirk does," Mei pointed out. Izuku reached over and activated her quirk on her. Her body started to float. She waved around her arms, trying to get herself stable. "Fascinating. It's more like force nullification than anything else," Izuku commented, feeling her weight acting on his stomach and nervous system. He poked her gently. She floated away, panicking slightly. She no longer had the power to stop the weightlessness. Mei was intrigued too. She ran over to her workbench and grabbed her notebook. "I want to test something." "Release," he said, touching all the pads. He then found this wasn't actually necessary. 2 contact points between his hand would have sufficed. Uraraka would have fallen to the floor, but Izuku picked her up out of the air. He set her down and walked outside. Uraraka followed. Mei came out with a device. She connected one diode to his head and another to his chest. "We use these to determine the amount of recoil his explosions cause. These are very sensitive. Right now he's being affected by gravity and a weak magnetic force. See," Mei explained, showing Uraraka a tablet. It had 6 graphs on it. Mei pointed to the ones she was referring to. "Test number 1, touch me, Uraraka-san," Izuku instructed. The tone and way he phrased it made her blush madly. It was like something out of a romance movie or novel. She walked over to him and made 5 points of contact with his arm. If it wasn't for the crazy readings on the tablet, she would have chastised Izuku. "What in the world? No forces are being applied to him." "0. Mei marveled. Izuku let loose a few explosions to orientate himself. Every explosion was picked up on the tablet. "Izuku, this is even more interesting. The forces you're applying are absolute. No dampening from gravity or magnetism. Except for air resistance, you could move as fast as powerful the explosion you used. Flight would be a cinch with this." Mei opened a few windows and started to input code and instructions. "Release me. Test 2, stop me," Izuku instructed. "Release. Wait, stop you?" Uraraka panicked. Izuku shot into the sky after getting gravity restored. He'd have to relearn how to fly thanks to Uraraka's quirk. He swooped down and came right at her. She panicked, sidestepped him, and slapped him across the face. Then her quirk activated and he came to a slow but quick halt. "Mei, how much force was nullified right there?" Izuku asked, floating. Using his explosions, he forced himself to the ground properly. He couldn't stand as there was no gravity, but he floated over to Mei. A red handprint was on his face. "All of it. That's a monstrous quirk," Mei commented. Izuku then tried something. He touched himself with his hand, activating her quirk. He then released his own, releasing both of them. The effect doesn't care where it came from. So regardless the ender it will cancel. Alright, new test, Izuku planned. Test number 3, I'm going to touch you, Izuku declared, walking up to Uraraka. She felt bad for slapping him so hard, but her arm stung from intercepting some of that flight force. A deep blush came over her when he got close. Mei was about to yell at him, but he reached out and touched Uraraka's arm. The brunette floated. Cancel it, Izuku commanded. Uraraka rose an eyebrow but nodded. Taking a deep breath, she called out for release. He felt his hold break. Slowly, through all of this, his stomach was beginning to turn. Very strong, very persistent nausea. Uraraka was so happy to find out more about her quirk. Zero gravity was what she thought, but in reality her quirk was force nullification. It was leagues more powerful. A real hero quirk. Without even knowing it, she had reached out and hugged him. Thank you, she said, breaking away. Her phone buzzed. After checking it briefly, looks like I need to go. Izuku was thinking about reaching out to her, but thought better of it. That was all he could do for her today. After Uraraka left, Mei's clicked her tongue. Hopefully, she didn't learn that Katsuki. What? Izuku asked, looking back at his girlfriend. I know she's the originator for that quirk of yours, but does she have to be so cute? Mei asked, feeling insecure. Izuku sighed and walked over to her. He took her into a hug. She rested her head on his chest. You don't have to worry about the girls of 1A. I'm pretty sure I offended Yaoyorozu-san this morning. Uraraka, I just want to help. She's got so much potential and she needs to realize it. Other than them, I haven't spoke much to the rest of the girls. Izuku reassured her. I know you have pure intentions, but doesn't mean I believe they do. I saw some of your classmates, and they're all cute or gorgeous. Mei retorted, looking up at his eyes. And you're just as gorgeous and cute as any of them. He smiled at her before kissing her. Thank you. I just get so insecure when you're around other girls, Mei admitted. Izuku understood. Mei doesn't view herself as a woman too much. She's an inventor first and woman second. That's fine. I'll just have to keep telling you how beautiful you are. Izuku smiled at her. She couldn't help but smile at that. You should stay and spend the night, Mei asked, grinning. On your tiny cot? Nope, I know where that goes, plus my mom would kill me, Izuku retorted. Mei pouted. Oh well. You'll lose. The pink-haired girl kissed him one last time before breaking away. Get going then. I'll see you in the morning, Mei stated, pushing him out the door. The door shut behind him. That was odd, Izuku thought before shrugging. The green-haired teen couldn't wait to be a pro-hero. He could just imagine himself flying through the air, stopping crime as he went. This force nullification quirk would be handy to have and even more so to use. The rest of his night was uneventful, to say the least. And that's a wrap for today's mind-bending episode. Huge thanks to Draconite227 for crafting this gripping narrative that keeps us on the edge of our seats. Don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that bell to join our League of Legends. Until next time, stay super, my friends.